Fitra, on three. 1, 2, 3, live.
Gosuseki no minasama, ohayo gozaimasu. Suzuki Bokodon Pitonora, ASJI no yoroshiku onegai itashimasu. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. A warm welcome from Jakarta, Indonesia. And I would like to welcome you all to ASJI International Symposium 2023. But before we proceed to the next program, I would like to announce the do's and the don'ts during this symposium. Tolong. Oke, aturan main simposium saya bacakan dulu terlebih dahulu dalam bahasa Indonesia. Telah hadir dalam virtual simposium ini, audio dan video peserta selalu di posisi off, presentasi langsung. Pertanyaan bila ada ditulis di penanya akan di-unmute dan di-spotlight oleh host. Peserta mengisi e-daftar hadir dengan aturan untuk e-sertifikat. Di akhir acara audio dan video, peserta boleh di-on-kan untuk bertegur sapa. Materi presenter bila ada akan dikirimkan bersamaan dengan e-sertifikat kepada peserta yang mengisi daftar hadir. Can I read in English, please? Okay. ASJI International Symposium 2023, Women's Role in Japan and Indonesia, Equal Opportunity in Political Participation, Social Engagement and Employment, Rules of the Symposium. Thank you for attending the virtual symposium today. Participant audio and video is always in the off position during the presentation. Questions, if any, are written in the chat box. The questioner will be unmuted and spotlighted by the host. Participants fill in the e-attendance accurately for the e-certificate. At the end of the symposium, audio and video can be turned on so that participants can greet each other. Presenter materials, if any, will be sent together with the e-certificate to participants who fill in the e-attendance. Thank you very much for your attention. Our next program will be Doa. We will be praying together accordingly to your own religion. Well, let's start. Thank you. And next, we will have the Indonesian National Anthem, Lagu Kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. opening remarks will be delivered by Julian Adwin Pasta, MA, PhD, Chairman of ASJI. Julian Sensei, よろしくお願いします。
どうもありがとうございます、野田先生。
はい。
Thanks to Nora. Honorable Mr. Takashi Uchi, Director General of Japan Foundation Jakarta, Bapak Dr. I. Made Sukamerta, MPD, Rector of Universitas Mahasarawati Denpasar, Professor Emeritus Aiko Kurasawa as a keynote speaker on our symposium. Our speakers, Professor Abdullah Al-Mamun, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh, Professor Dr. Aminuddin Hassan of University Putra Malaya, Malaysia, Professor Bakhtiar Alam, PhD from Universitas Indonesia, and he was a former chairman or officer of ASJI. All speakers, participants, and audience on this webinar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Best wishes for all of us. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Ohayo gozaimasu, Selamat pagi, and very good morning. Firstly, allow me to give thanks to God Almighty for His permission that we all can gather here in a good atmosphere and in good health. May I begin with introduce myself. I, Julian Pasha, representing the Indonesian Associations for Japanese Studies called ASJI, and I am also from the Universitas Indonesia indeed. It is a great honor for me to welcome all of you to this event. Let me give a few introductory words about ASJI and these activities. As you may know, ASJI is a professional association that aims to facilitate any discussions and exchange of views among researchers, scholars, students, and who have any concerns about Japan's-Indonesian relations or Japanese studies in particular. Since its establishment in 1990, ASJI has been continuously involved in terms of developing Japanese studies through various activities such as holding seminars or symposiums, and also various educational pieces of training in terms of Japanese studies. And of these activities can be held due to support from the Japan Foundation Jakarta. So I want to thanks to the Japan Foundations, which has been fully supporting all of ASJI's activities every year. Today, we raise an issue of women rules in Japan and Indonesia, equal opportunity in political participations, social engagement, and employment, which is an issue is not only interesting, but also important to discuss with. We all know that there are some spirit to equalize the position of women in social, political, and job or work field. As we know, the role of women has increasing exponentially in today's world. In Japan, gender equality and rights between men and women becoming important. An important issue even though in Japan cultures, it adheres to a patrimonial system like Indonesia. I reminisce about the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe while delivering his speech entitled Towards a Society which All Women Sign in the United Nations General Assembly last 2013. Referring to statistical data on which share of women holding leadership position in politics in Japan during the last 5 years by types of female politicians as a member of parliaments in the House of Councillors, such Sanghian, when women make up more than 33%. And the employment rate for women in Japan stand at around 50%, which is increasing from the previous years. With respect to this issue, I thank in advance Professor Aiko Kurasawa, for gives a talk as a keynote speaker today in this event. I'm sure her perspective will be enlightening for all of us. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, the role of women increased significantly in political fields since a quota of 30% was set for the minimum numbers of women in political parties participating in elections or local elections. However, it becomes interesting to observe that the reality of 30% quota was not met with the certainty of seats for women in parliament. In a nutshell, this is such a dilemma of women political representation in Indonesia. In the field of social and businesses, many changes happen. Rising issues of emancipation of women and gender equality have undeniably expanded. There is a not few women who become successful company leaders, CEO, and entrepreneurs, even if in the state-owned enterprise as well. In this context, it is important to look at the role of women in Japan and Indonesia. I'm sure we will hear different perspectives on this issue on this webinar. Without further ado, hopefully this event will be benefiting for all of us. Again, and thank you and have a great meeting. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om, Santi, Santi, Santi Om. Thank you.
Julian Sensei, arigatou gozaimashita. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Takahashi Yuichi, Director General, the Japan Foundation, Jakarta. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Baik, Nora Sensei, terima kasih. Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Minasan, ohayou gozaimasu. Salam hangat dari Japan Foundation Jakarta. Yang saya hormati, Dr. Andas Imade Sukamerta, MPD, Lektor Universitas Mahasaraswati Denpasar, Bapak Julian Aldrin Pasha, MA, PhD, Ketua Asosiasi Studi Jepang di Indonesia. Sebelumnya, saya ingin menyampaikan terima kasih atas kesempatan yang diberikan kepada saya untuk hadir di sini secara virtual. Perkenalkan saya Takahashi Yuichi, Direktur Jenderal The Japan Foundation Jakarta. Merupakan suatu kehormatan besar bagi saya untuk dapat memberikan kata sambutan dalam acara simposium Asosiasi Studi Jepang di Indonesia di Universitas Mahasaraswati Denpasar dengan tema Women's Role in Japan and Indonesia, Equal Opportunity in Political Participation, Social Engagement and Employment. Atas nama The Japan Foundation Jakarta, saya ingin secara khusus menyampaikan terima kasih kepada Asosiasi Studi Jepang di Indonesia Pusat yang telah menginisiasikan dan juga mempersiapkan segala hal sehingga acara simposium ini dapat terlaksana, dan juga kepada Universitas Mahasaraswati Denpasar yang telah bersedia menjadi tuan rumah untuk simposium kali ini. Selain itu, perkenankan saya untuk juga menyampaikan terima kasih kepada keynote speaker Profesor Emeritus Aiko Kurasawa dari Keio University, dan keenam main speaker kita pada hari ini, Dr. Abdullah Al-Mamun, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh, Profesor Madya Dr. Aminduin Hassan, University Putra, Malaysia, Bakshar Alam, PhD, Universitas Indonesia, Dr. Rizaka Harida, Universitas Indonesia, Dr. Kurniawati Hastuti Dwi, PISIP, MA, Peneliti Senior BRIN, Dewi Kusuma Shanti, BCom, MA, Institut Agama Hindu, Negeri Gede Putra Mataram. Andi Bangkit Setiawan, MA, PhD, Universitas Dian Nusa Wantoro. Semoga simposium yang diadakan hari ini dapat menjadi sebuah acara diskusi yang tidak hanya menarik, tapi juga bermanfaat bagi kita semua untuk dapat lebih memahami peranan penting perempuan di dalam berbagai sektor. Demikian yang dapat saya sampaikan. Selamat mengikuti simposium di pagi hari ini. Dan selamat berdiskusi. Sekian sambutan dari saya. Terima kasih. Arigatou gozaimashita. Minasan yoroshiku onegai shimasu.
Takahashi sama, arigatou gozaimashita. Yeah. Next opening remarks will be from Dr. Randus Ima Desamerta, MPD, Rector of Mahasaraswati University, Denpasar. He will be deliver his speech directly from Tokyo. Sensei, yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Thank you. Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, namo buddhaya, selamat pagi, selamat sejahtera untuk kita semua. I'm sorry, I have to deliver my speech from Lake Kawaguchi. It is lucky that the bus will start in 5 minutes. So it's the time for me to deliver my speech. I'm sorry for that. First, the Honorable Chairman of ASJI, Julian Adrian Pasa, MA, PhD. So the first time for me to talk directly with you, Pak Pasian, although I know that you are very famous before, yeah, because you are the speaker of our president. Thank you for including Mahasaraswati in this seminar. The Honorable Director General of the Japan Foundation Jakarta, Mr. Takahashi Yuichi. The Honorable Keynote Speaker, Prof. Emeritus Aiko Kurasawa from Keiko University, Japan. The Honorable main speakers, among others, Dr. Abdullah Al Maimun, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. Professor Madya Aminuddin Hasan, University Putra Malaysia. Bakshar Alam PhD from University of Indonesia. The Honorable plenary speakers, among others, there are Corina Rian Putra M.Com PhD, University of Indonesia. Dr. Kurniawati Astuti Dewi, MA from BRAIN. Dewi Kusumahanti BCom MA from Gede Puja Mataram. Adi Bakit Siawan MA PhD di Dian Nuswantoro University. And the excellent speakers and participants of the International Symposium and Seminar on Japanese Studies in Indonesia. The lovely committee, both from Faculty of Foreign Language, Universitas Mahasaraswati Denpasar, and the Indonesian Association for Japanese Studies, ASJI, who have already prepared this symposium and seminar. It is mentioned already by Mr. Pasya that I believe women in both countries Japan and Indonesia always have special roles that could enlighten their family, paths, and nation's policy. In Indonesia context, the roles of the woman have been long studied, and in terms of equal opportunities, it is getting increased. Our Minister of Women's Empowerment and Child Protection, Ibu Bintang Puspayoga, mentions that for the record, Women's Human Development Index in 2021 remained below men's. It means that women's Human Development Index was 99.59, while men's was 76.25. So Indonesian's Gender Development Index was 91.27, which indicates that there is a gap between women and men. She also stressed the important spot of all stakeholders to achieve the equal opportunities. Therefore, women will be given a chance to access, then to receive benefits of development. It must be equal. I do hope that the current symposium and seminar will come up with an idea that could renew national policy and equal opportunity on women's roles. It is expected that the international symposium and seminar might bring fruitful impacts on the participants' professional development. This forum can be used to share their research findings, insights, and further collaborations on the phenomena dealing with equal opportunities on women's roles, particularly in political participants, social engagement, and employment. The forum is also hoped to stimulate all participants to critically explore the topics so that further new knowledge and understanding could enrich and renew these existing topics. The speakers at this forum are coming from different backgrounds of expertise. This is an outstanding moment where the participants could work collaboratively to yield more comprehensive, elaborative findings dealing with the topics. In other words, this forum can be used by all participants to build their networks so that further collaborative contributions might give tremendous impacts on the current topics. Finally, once again, I would like to sincerely express my gratitude to the keynote, main, and plenary speakers and all participants for your fruitful contributions on this forum. I do hope that it would yield new knowledge, further understandings, and insights on the aforementioned topics. Thank you very much. So I'm so sorry that I have to deliver my speech from Japan, but I'm happy today because I'm in Japan. Nearly, I don't know the names, but this is the name of the location is Lake Kawaguchi. Yeah, now it is on the way to Japan. I will meet the forum rectors of Japan and also to visit the Duta Besar. So once again, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you.
Sensei, arigatou gozaimashita. Kosuseki no minasama, we will step on the next program. I would like to invite our keynote speaker today, 慶応大学の Kurasawa Aiko Kyoju. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. But before that, I would like to read some short of biography of Kurasawa Kyoju. Kurasawa Kyoju was a special assistant for Ambassador of Japan to Japan Embassy in Jakarta, teaching at Nagoya University, visiting professor at Gajah Mada University, teaching at Keio University, and retired from Keio University and appointed as a professor emeritus, visiting professor at Cambridge University. And I would like to invite my co-high, Andi Bangkit Sensei. Andi Bangkit Sensei from ASJI. Okay. Andi Bangkit Sensei, yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. Minasan ohayou gozaimasu. Good morning, everybody. And this is an honor for me to be here with all the scholars and also the distinguished researchers gathered today for the ASJI annual symposium. And for this session, I was appointed as the moderator for the keynote speaker Kurasawa Sensei speech. And without taking any further minutes, I will ask for Kurasawa Sensei to give the lecture and also the speech. And for Kurasawa Sensei, we only have 40 minutes, around 40 minutes.
はい、わかりました。
It's the 40 minutes, including the question and answer session and also the discussion session. So I think it's very, very brief session, but I think we like to hear a lot from you. So please, the time is yours.
はい、
日本語と英語どちらでも構わないんですけれども。
じゃあ最初は日本語でいいですか？
はい、よろしくお願いします。
はい、皆さんおはようございます。こちらはもうお昼ですけれども、おはようございます。今日は私をこのような機会に招待してくださいまして大変ありがとうございました。kepada Honorable Chairman of ASJI, Bapak Julian Adrian Pasha, dan Direktur Jenderal Japan Foundation Bapak Takahashi Yuichi, dan Rektor Universitas Mahasaraswati Denpasar, Dr. Made Sukamerta, I'm sorry, dan juga speakers dari main speakers, Dr. Abdullah Arumamun dari Bangladesh, Professor Dr. Aminuddin Hassan from Malaysia, Dr. Bahtiar Alam dari Indonesia, dan para pembicara dan pada penghadirin yang terhormat, saya sangat senang dan merasa sangat terhormat diundang untuk bicara hari ini sebagai keynote speaker. Karena saya tidak ada cukup banyak waktu untuk persiapan, pembicaraan hari ini agak berantakan, tapi tolong minta maaf. それではパワーポイントを使いたいんですけども、ちょっと使い方がよくわからないんです。ちょっと待ってくださいね。参加者の画面共有が無効になってますが、有効にしていただけますか？わかりますか？Saya mau pakai PowerPoint.
はい、先生、いかがでしょうか。
いいですか？大丈夫ですか？
はい。まだ先生の画面が見えて
どうしたらいいですか？これ私の顔はどうやって消したらいいですか？
mungkin dari Pak Handoko bisa tolong dipandu.
Sudah siap.
Sudah siap. Sensei, 下のボタンに共有。
はい。画面の共有。
はい、そうですね。
スクリーン
はい。
シェア。はい。これ押しますね。はい、押しました。はい。
したら、
出てきました、出てきました。
はい。
これでいいですか？これなんですけども、ちょっと待ってください。いいですか？
見えて、はい、大丈夫です。
はい、わかりました。ありがとうございます。
はい、よろしくお願いします。
はい。Kalau begitu sekarang saya mulai ya. Ya, sebentar. Judul pembicaraan hari ini saya itu Shoshika Taisaku. Ini kalau Shoshika Taisaku, kalau bahasa Indonesia mungkin kebijakan kemerosotan angka kelahiran. Dan saya akan bicara tentang status dan posisi ibu hamil dan pengasuhan bayi di Jepang masa kini. Sejak akhir 1990-an, daya ekonomi Jepang di pasar dunia internasional makin lama makin merosot. Sekarang, akhirnya, GDP per kapita Jepang nomor ke-27 di dunia. Sedangkan Jepang pernah menikmati posisi nomor 2 sesudah Amerika Serikat. Pada saat posisi ekonomi ini, pemerintah mulai menjadi tiba-tiba mulai memperhatikan secara serius posisi perempuan. Mengapa demikian? Penjelasannya demikian. Pemerintah Jepang menganggap kelemahan ekonomi Jepang disebabkan oleh turunnya jumlah penduduk. Kekurangan jumlah penduduk menimbulkan kekurangan tenaga kerja dan turunnya daya membeli. Lalu berbagai konsumsi juga berkurang. Umpamanya, kebutuhan atas perumahan menjadi kecil dan di seluruh Jepang tercatat ada 8.500.000 rumah kosong yang tidak ditempati. Sebagai akibatnya, harga rumah dan apartemen jatuh merosot. Rentannya harga mengundang banyak pembeli dari luar negeri, khususnya dari Hong Kong, Tiongkok, Singapura, dan baru-baru ini juga dari Indonesia. Ada fenomena dan kecenderungan rumah dan apartemen di daerah elit Tokyo banyak dibeli oleh orang asing. Berkurangnya jumlah generasi muda juga memberi dampak negatif kepada dunia pendidikan. Jumlah institusi di pendidikan tinggi yang pernah bertambah karena baby boom kedua, sekarang banyak mengalami kekurangan murid. Sekolah tinggi berusaha survive dengan cara mengundang mahasiswa dari luar negeri secara masif. Untuk memudahkan afiliasi mahasiswa asing, banyak universitas menyediakan jurusan di mana mahasiswa bisa belajar dalam bahasa Inggris saja, yaitu tanpa belajar bahasa Jepang. Tenaga kerja juga kurang, dan industri Jepang mengalami krisis. Sorry. Saya melanjutkan. Tenaga kerja juga kurang dan industri Jepang mengalami krisis. Salah satu solusinya, Jepang memudahkan peraturan masuknya trainee atau kenshusei dalam ukuran masif. Jepang tidak memakai istilah tenaga asing kerja, tetapi tetap memanggil mereka trainees atau kenshusei. Tetap pemerintah menyadari tindakan-tindakan itu tidak bisa menjadi solusi fundamental yang memecahkan masalah kekurangan penduduk untuk selama-lamanya. Pemerintah menyadari bahwa satu-satunya solusi yang bisa menyelamatkan Jepang adalah dengan menambah jumlah kelahiran bayi secara drastis. Zaman sekarang, banyak generasi muda di Jepang cenderung tidak menikah. Dan meskipun mereka menikah, tidak ingin punya anak. Pada saat ini, istri juga mau kerja. Istri-istri juga mau kerja di luar rumah. Tetapi kalau ada anak kecil, situasi dan kesempatannya menjadi sangat terbatas. Harus ada tempat penitipan anak dengan biaya tidak terlalu mahal, tapi masih sangat sulit dicari dan didapatkan. Selain kurangnya penitipan anak, pengasuhan anak memerlukan berbagai biaya yang tinggi. PowerPoint ada sedikit salah. Tadi ini sudah selesai. Sekarang tadi sini. Selain kurangnya penitipan anak, pengasuhan anak memerlukan berbagai biaya yang tinggi. Biaya untuk melahirkan bukan main mahalnya. Rata-rata setengah juta yen atau 50 juta rupiah. Dan tidak bisa ditutupi dalam dana asuransi, dari dana asuransi. Selain itu, masih ada berbagai kesulitan untuk ongkos dan pengurangan lainnya. Biayanya sungguh mahal kalau ingin memberi pendidikan cukup tinggi dan dengan mutu yang baik. Sorry. Ada sedikit masalah dengan komputer saya. Tiba-tiba zoom-nya hilang. Sorry.
先生、画面はまだ見えていますけれども、はい。
私のコンピューターで画面が見えないんですけど、ちょっと待ってください。
そうですか。はい、わかりました。
ちょっと待ってくださいね。
はい。
どこに行っちゃったかな。Tunggu sebentar ya, maaf ya. Sorry, tiba-tiba Zoom の画面が消えてしまいました。どうしましたかね。見えますか？もしもし。
はい、見えます。
やっと見えました。すいません、もう一回やり直しますね。
はい、よろしくお願いします。
はい。ここから行きましょうか。はい。Selain kurangnya penitipan anak, biaya untuk melahirkan bukan main mahalnya. Rata-rata setengah juta yen atau 50 juta rupiah dan tidak bisa ditutupi dari dana asuransi. Selain itu, masih ada berbagai kesulitan untuk ongkos dan biaya lainnya. Biayanya sungguh mahal kalau ingin memberi pendidikan cukup tinggi dan dengan mutu yang baik. Sebagai akibatnya, dengan halangan dan masalah-masalah itu, jumlah anak Jepang yang lahir menjadi sangat rendah. Kurang dari 800.000 orang bayi lahir pada tahun 2022. Jumlah penurunan ini sangat signifikan kalau dibandingkan dengan masa zaman dulu. Waktu baby boom di gelombang pertama, yaitu 1947 dan 49, waktu itu terdapat 2.700.000 orang kelahiran bayi per tahun. Dan di gelombang masa baby boom kedua, berjumlah 2.100.000 bayi lahir per tahun. Secara perhitungan kasar, kelahiran sekarang hanya 1/3 dari masa puncak. Angka rata-rata seorang perempuan melahirkan seumur hidup adalah angka rata-rata seorang perempuan melahirkan di Jepang seumur hidup adalah 1,3 orang bayi. Kalau angka kelahiran ini kurang dari 2 orang bayi, jumlah penduduk otomatis berkurang. Pemerintah menyadari situasi seperti ini sangat kritis dan berbahaya bagi nasib masa depan Jepang. Pemerintah mencoba mulai memperbaikinya. Dari sini, pemerintah Jepang mulai melakukan tindakan untuk mendorong agar generasi muda lebih giat melahirkan. Oleh sebab itu, diambil langkah-langkah untuk memperbaiki situasi dan kondisi bagi ibu-ibu hamil dan juga ibu yang bekerja sambil mengasuh anak. Serangkaian upaya ini disebut Shoshika Taisaku atau kebijakan kemerosotan angka keluaran. Sorry, ini sedikit salah. Mungkin bahasa Indonesia yang tepat untuk Shoshika Taisaku adalah kebijakan kemerosotan angka kelahiran. Untuk menangani masalah ini, pada tahun 2015 telah dibentuk satu posisi Menteri Negara yang disebut Shoshika Tanto Daijin atau Menteri penanggung jawab untuk urusan kemerosotan angka kelahiran. Posisi ini kemudian akan diganti dengan kementerian yang dinamakan sebagai Kodomo Tantocho atau Departemen Urusan Anak yang akan dibentukkan pada April 2023, sebentar lagi. Beberapa langkah diambil untuk meningkatkan rata-rata jumlah kelahiran birth rate. Salah satunya adalah kebijaksanaan yang diberikan kepada ibu hamil pada waktu melahirkan, bantuan dana yang disebut Shusan Ichijikin yang kurang lebih 500.000 yen atau 50 juta rupiah diberikan oleh pemerintah daerah. Lalu setiap anak di bawah umur diberi bantuan yang dinamakan sebagai jido teate. Bantuan ini dilakukan secara tunai yang diberi oleh pemerintah daerah. Lalu, langkah kedua, ibu-ibu yang bekerja akan mendapatkan berbagai cuti dengan dibayar. Selain daripada sangkyu atau cuti kelahiran yang diberi 6 minggu sebelum dan 8 minggu sesudah melahirkan, sekarang juga diberi cuti 1 atau 2 tahun untuk mengasuh bayi kecil. Cuti ini disebut ikukyu atau secara lengkap ikujikyuka. Selama cuti ikukyu, 70% dari gaji dibayar oleh asuransi. Bukan hanya istri, tetapi suami juga diberi cuti sampai bayi menjadi usia 1 tahun. Dalam bahasa sehari-hari, itu disebut dansei ikukyu. Masing-masing perusahaan menentukan sistem pemberian dananya, dan untuk itu diberikan kompensasi oleh pemerintah daerah atau asosiasi asuransi kerja. Pemerintah Kishida mengharapkan efek positif langkah-langkah ini akan keluar dalam 6 atau 7 tahun ke depan. Pada saat ini, sudah ada banyak kemajuan. Pada waktu saya melahirkan kurang lebih 40 tahun yang lalu, situasinya sangat beda. Saya hanya diberi cuti kelahiran 6 minggu sebelum dan sesudah melahirkan masing-masing. Cuti untuk mengasuh bayi sama sekali tidak ada. Peraturan pemerintah sudah sangat baik begini. Sangat baik begini bagi ibu hamil dan ibu yang mengasuh anak dan suaminya. Sekaligus mendorong perempuan yang bekerja di luar rumah. Tetapi, apakah pandangan orang Jepang berubah oleh karena kebijakan-kebijakan itu? Pada umumnya, masih sedikit yang sempat menikmati kebijakan itu. Pertama, kebijakan itu hanya diberlakukan kepada sebagian kecil pekerja yang kerja di perusahaan besar dengan status pekerja tetap dan reguler. Kebanyakan perusahaan kecil dan menengah belum mampu menyelenggarakan program tersebut dan membayar dan menanggung gaji kepada karyawan yang tidak kerja. Apalagi yang outsourcing dan kerja semacam kontrak tidak diberi kesempatan itu. Sebagai akibatnya, umpamanya yang mengambil dansei ikukyu hanya sekitar 14% saja dari karyawan yang sebenarnya berhak mendapatkannya. Alasannya berbagai macam. Selain karena pihak perusahaan enggan, tapi karyawan laki-laki juga ragu-ragu untuk mendapatkannya karena mempertimbangkan risiko bagi kolega dan rekan kerjanya yang harus memikul beban pekerjaan yang dia tinggalkan. Mengapa pikiran begitu? Hal itu berasal dari pandangan orang Jepang terhadap perempuan kerja yang masih belum cukup maju dan terbuka. Masih ada tekanan masyarakat yang tidak mau mengizinkan perempuan bekerja dengan segiat dan setingkat dengan posisi pria. Dipikirkan bahwa perempuan tidak boleh mengorbankan pekerjaan rumah tangga untuk pekerjaan di luar rumah. Menurut pandangan masyarakat Jepang secara umum, pekerjaan oleh perempuan tidak begitu penting bagi masyarakat. Mereka lebih berguna hanya sebagai tambahan tenaga kerja. Umpamanya, masih dipikirkan perempuan harus pulang ke rumah sebelum anak-anak pulang dari sekolah, atau paling lambat sebelum jam menyediakan makan malam. Seandainya kalau ada rapat penting yang dilanjutkan lewat jam masak, tidak bisa. Juga perempuan tidak boleh pergi keluar kota untuk dinas yang bermalam. Tidak boleh pergi keluar kota untuk dinas yang bermalam. Artinya, seorang perempuan di Jepang sulit untuk memegang posisi jabatan tinggi dan penting. Perempuan Indonesia, menurut saya, perempuan Indonesia sering memegang posisi tinggi seperti kepala jurusan, dekan, dan lain-lain. Kalau di Jepang sangat sulit seorang perempuan yang sudah menikah, apalagi yang sudah punya anak, memegang jabatan puncak atau tinggi. Memang pandangannya sudah mulai berubah sedikit demi sedikit, dan sekarang sudah mulai ada cukup banyak kemajuan. Tetapi di mata saya, situasi ini di Jepang yang masih sangat terbatas. Menurut Gender Gap Index pada tahun 2022, urutan Jepang di dunia nomor ke-116. Yang paling rendah, yaitu nomor ke-146, adalah Afghanistan yang terkenal sebagai negara di mana perempuan sangat di nomor 2-kan. %78,8% orang Jepang memikirkan bahwa posisi perempuan dalam masyarakat Jepang tidak equal dengan laki-laki. Pandangan masyarakat Jepang terhadap perempuan sangat miring dan feudalistik karena cara pikiran ini berdasarkan atas pelajaran Konfusius yang masih ditanami tanpa sadar dalam pikiran kebanyakan orang Jepang. Kadang-kadang perempuan sendiri masih memegang teguh cara pikirannya sangat feudal yang dipengaruhi ajaran Konfusius. Di situ posisi perempuan selalu menjadi nomor 2 dan seorang perempuan harus ikut orang tua dan kalau sudah menikah harus ikut suami. Generasi muda sudah mulai berubah dan mulai menolak interpretasi demikian. Tetapi generasi tua yang masih memegang inti pemerintah, perusahaan, institut pendidikan, dan lain-lain, masih dipengaruhi secara kuat oleh ajaran Konfusius. Mungkin dalam waktu yang tidak lama lagi, situasi ini akan berubah secara drastis apabila generasi muda akan memegang jabatan penting dari masyarakat. Dan saya sungguh mengharapkan perubahan tersebut. Terima kasih. Sekian presentasi saya.
原沢先生、ありがとうございました。大変貴重な情報ですし、つまり、現在日本にどのような問題があったのか、今現在日本政府がどのような取り組みをやっていますかっていうのが非常に明確に説明していただきました。ありがとうございました。It's very useful information for us actually, and we also realize that the problem of the Shoshika Mondai, actually, even though in Japan it's really in reality in our daily life we can realize that, but actually Indonesia is facing the same problem actually. You know that according to Indonesia Bureau of Statistics, that our birth rate actually is decreasing to 30% actually this year. So even though Indonesian now, especially for the Indonesians, the scholar especially, we realize that in 2045 we will face our demographic bonus, since that the number of the young people who will pay the tax will be bigger than the elder. But actually, some of the scholars, Indonesian scholars, also a bit afraid, actually, a bit how the 2045 generation will face the reality of the demographic bonus in Indonesia. And this is so what the Japan today, the Japan problems today actually will become a good insight for Indonesia actually. So according to you, how relevant actually about the ideology that lies within the Japanese society, to which is become the base of how they know or how they acknowledge about the female birth rates, or maybe the function of the female or the women within the society. 先生による先生のお考えでは、どのように例えば社会の中のイデオロギーだとか、どのような影響、どれぐらい大きいなのかというのが質問させていただきたいんですけれども。
イデオロギーの影響ですか？
はい。
はい。
現在、特に現在のことですけれども、どのようなふうに例えばもちろん日本の例えば小学校から高校までの授業の中には、そのような例えば儒教的な価値観だとか、それによって女性をこう見るべきだというのがまるまる生々しくは教えてはいないと思うんですけれども、ただ
もちろんです。
はい。ただ、そのようないわゆる社会まで内在しているいわゆるイデオロギー考え方、価値観としては実際にはどのような生きているのか、もう少し具体的、はい、そうです。
取り組みですか？Tindakan terhadap pikiran yang kuno seperti itu yang dipengaruhi oleh Confucius. Wow, memang di sekolah sama sekali tidak ada ajaran Confucius sekarang, justru dibantah, dan ideologi baru dari negara-negara barat dan lain-lainnya masuk secara drastis, dan di sekolah, di tempat pendidikan memang diajarin pikiran yang baru total. Desu kara, generasi muda wa sudah banyak berubah. Rapidly sudah banyak berubah. Tapi generasi setingkat saya, seumur saya, itu dalam otak masih ditanam pikiran Confucius, dan meskipun ingin membantah dengan ideologi baru, itu sangat sulit. Karena sudah biasa begitu, sudah ditanam dalam hati dalam.
Tapi 政府のいわゆる取り込むというのが非常に効率的だと思っていらっしゃるんですか？
政府というよりも、いろいろなメディアソシアルとか、そういったものから新しいイデオロギーが入ってきています。で、若い人たちは外国の考え方とか、新しい考え方に大きく影響されていますから、全然と言ってもいいぐらい古い儒教的な考え方には影響されてないと思います。そこにギャップがあるんですね。ジェネレーションギャップがあります。だから、saya sangat agak optimis. Kalau generasi tua hilang, nanti secara otomatis generasi muda sudah mulai pikir cara pikiran yang baruと思います。
もちろんそれもまた時間もかかるだと思いますし、はい。だとしたら、先ほど先生がおっしゃった、今の若者が、例えばソーシャルメディアだとか、例えば、強いて言うと、例えば他の文化と接触して、そこで新しい考え、新しいアイディアを吸収して、で変わってくるというのがありますけれども、 としたら実際にはそれ政府が取っている政策ではなく、むしろこう自然的な動き、社会の動きだというふうに考えてもよろしいですか？
おっしゃる通りです。政府がやっているティンダ感よりも、むしろソーシャルメディアの影響の方がずっと大きいと思います。
だとしたらこういうふうな、いわゆるこう社会の認識の形成の中には、今後の例えばお年寄りの世代がもうすでに去って、でそこで今の若者の世代となって、このままの自然的な形成というのが今後大丈夫でしょうか？つまりこう非常にこう揺られやすいなんじゃないかなと思います。
私はオプティミストですね。それに対して大丈夫と思います。はい。それほど今、ソーシャルメディアの影響とか、外国の考え方の影響は大きいですね。
なるほど、わかりました。So we have a question actually from Ibu Evi Aryati. Maybe we can give a session for her. Pak Handoko mungkin bisa diberikan di displaykan untuk pertanyaannya. Actually we don't 実は質疑応答の場面を設けていませんが、少し質問、フロアから質問がありまして、でも先生の今日の説明を聞きまして、少しインドネシアの状況をちょっと照らし合わせますと、インドネシア今後どうなるんだろうというのが少し心配はありますけれども、同じ方向で向かっているのか、で特に今のインドネシアの若者にはフリーチャイルドという考えが非常に盛んになっていて、いくつかの何人かのいわゆるソーシャルメディアには非常に影響が大きい方々にはそれを非常に奨励しているという状況もありまして、もう子供なしで書いた家庭を築くという運動というか考えなんですけれども、これと逆に日本は今それをなくして今の若者が非常に子供に興味があるだとか少子化には非常にソーシャルメディアを通じて取り込むというのが話を聞いたら非常に真逆な現象が起こっているんじゃないかなと思いますね。
日本でも若者たちはやはり子供ない人生、子供なしの人生を描いて、その方がいろいろ将来的にも充実していると考える人が多いです。若い人は多いです。とても多いです。それで多いけれどもまだ数字で言えば半分には満たないですね。半分よりは少ないです。身近な例で言いますと、私はsaya punya dua anak. Satu, dua-duanya sudah menikah. Satu tidak mau, sudah memutuskan tidak akan punya anak. Dan yang kedua, anak satu lagi barusan melahirkan. Jadi私の子供は半分半分、50-50ですね。yang ingin punya anak dan yang tidak mau punya anak、50-50です。でも、ソサエティ全体では多分、masih lebih banyak yang mau punya anakです。jauh lebih banyakですね。で、しかし、子供を持ちたくないというテンデンシーはだんだん大きくなってきます。makin lama makin besarですね。それで、pemerintah sangat khawatir terhadap situasi demikian ということなんですね。
はい、そうですね。もしそういう考えがだんだん社会の中に拡散して死者がだんだん増えてくるというのは、さらに少子化の問題にも非常に関わっていますので、政府はそれを無視して取り込まないというのがありないなと思ったんですけれども、そうですね。ただ、先生、実際には、今の、先生の観察でも、例えば今の大学生でも結構ですけれども、ソーシャルメディアでどのようなことを議論したりとか、特にこの少子化の問題 については、今の若者はどういうふうな見方、捉え方を持っているのか、特にソーシャルメディアを通じてそれを何かを発信するというのが非常に私たちインドネシアにいるうちには多分その問題は観察しにくいと思うんですけれども、先生の観察によるとどういうものがありますかというのが。
すみません。私はソーシャルメディアを自分はほとんど使わないので、ソーシャルメディアの世界でどんな話が行われているか全然わからないんで、ごめんなさい。わからないんですけども。
はい。
ちょっと話わかりますけど、一つ担保させてください。さっき、政府は一生懸命、子供を持ちたくないという考え方を否定して、子供を持つようにムンドロン感しています。しかし、政府の間違いは、お金をたくさん出せば、ね、いいと思ってるんですよ。お金をたくさん出せば、若い人たちは子供を産むだろうと思ってるんです。でも実は問題は、エコノミックプロブレムだけじゃないわけですね。いろんなことで、例えば将来がもう、今の世界は将来がとても暗いとか、そういう、考え方のある人もたくさんいるわけですから、そこにもっと明るい未来というのか、本当に楽しい未来を描けるようなものを教えていかないと、やっていけないんじゃないかと思います。つまり、お金を潤沢に用意して、いろいろな政策を作ればいいと政府は思ってるけど、それが間違いだと思っています。
なるほど。先生、政府は実際にそういうふうな取り組み、エコノミック的な、経済的な、取り組みしか取らないというのが、どういうふうな背景があるだとお考えですか？
すいません、私にはわからないですけれども、岸田首相はとにかく、これだけたくさんお金を使えば、6年か7年で状況は逆転するだろう、反対になるだろう。つまり、少子化じゃなくて子供は増えていくだろうと考えてますね。ちょっとオプティミスティックだと思いますね。うまくいかないと思います。
でも実際にはどうですか、先生？
まだ
途中ですけれど、
まだ効果は出てきてないですね。
期待は期待していますけれども、例えば、10年後が効果が見えると、非常になんだろう、ギャンブル的な政策になっていますので、
そう思います。
悪化ならないと願ってほしいですね。
悪くならないと。
はい、そうですね。これ以上、この問題進みますと、非常に日本社会全体には、非常に危機的な状況に陥っていますので。
おっしゃる通りです。どうも。私は専門では、この問題は全然専門ではないので、本当に深いことは何もわからなくてすみません。
はい。私、実際には、これ先生の、実は先生命題に教えていた時の、学科ですね、国際開発研究科。私、実は2018年までに、その隣の教育開発研究科の方に、准教授やらせていただきましたけれども。
そうですか、失礼しました。
特にその時は、Women Empowerment Program について結構取り込んでおりまして、実際にはこれ私が実感したんですけれども、そのプログラムは実際には私たちが作ったのが、どのように日本の女性、特に大学生がより明るい未来というか、大きな視野を持って社会の中に入っていくっていうのが実は目的だったんですけれども、ただ残念ながらこういうプログラムは非常にいいプログラムだったんですけれども、このプログラムに参加したのがほとんど留学生ですね。
そうですか。
大学生があんまり興味がなくて、特に日本人の学生が興味がなくて、非常に残念だなと思ったんですけれども。
はい。そうですか。
はい。
はい。
ちょっと質問を読ませていただきます。
はい。
はい。では質問が一つありますけれども、 インドネシア語なんですが、先生大丈夫だと思いますので、
ゆっくり読んでください。
はい、わかりました。Bagaimana Prof. Kurasawa melihat peranan perempuan yang ditinggal suaminya ketika pergi berperang? Apakah ada peranan negara untuk mereka? Kemarin kau
Ketika ditinggalkan suami?
pergi berperang, senso ni, senji
も
ni
し戦
ikuto
争
kini.
に、
そうで
いつ
すね。
の話、現在の話ですか？
おそらく現在ではないような気がするんですけれ
ああ、
ども。
昔の時ですか？
はい。
はい。はいはい。すいません。
で、
もう一回言
その時、
ってください。
はい。女性が、ご主人が戦争行くとき、政府の、つまり国の貢献、その女性たちへの貢献はありますか、というのが一つです。
戦争の時は、本当に、モビリザシ、トータルの社会でしたから、すべての女性は、個人の利益のためではなく、国のために、女性だけじゃない、すべての人間は国のために働かなければいけない。だから、夫が戦争に行っても文句を言ってはいけない。悲しんではいけない。むしろ喜ばなければいけない。自分は、社会に役に立つことができることを誇りに思わなければいけないと、そういう教育を受けてきました。でも、今だったら全然違うと思います。今なら大反対が起こると思います。
なるほど。
男性が戦争に行くというようなことになったら、もうみんな嫌ですね。はい、全然違うと思います。
で、今でしたら、先生、ちなみに今でしたら、どのような教育が与えられて、つまりどのような教育内容を、それを、社会というか、その女性に、与えて、いますかね。国、政府からだと。
今一つは女性がマンディリになるということですね。tidak usah menggantungkan ke suamiになるように教育しています。それは、例えば、戦争でditinggalkanじゃなくって、perceraianとか、あるいはsuami meninggalとか、それでジャンダになった人たちが、bisa mandiriでなるような、そういう女性になるように、教育しようとしています、一つは。で、そのことが、tidak mau menikahにつながってくるんですよ。
そうです。さっきちらっとちょっと思い浮かんだんですけれども、これ、政策に逆効果になるんじゃない？
逆効果なんです。そうなんです。karena bisa mandiri, tidak usah kawin lah ってそういうふうになっちゃうわけですね。はいはい。
非常に悪循環になってますね。
悪循環です。とても難しい問題だと思いますね。
なるほど。2回目の質問ですけれども、
はい。
pertanyaan kedua, bagaimana perempuan Jepang bersiap dengan eksistensi artificial intelligence, dan terakhir sejauh mana peranan perempuan Jepang pada era Jepang 5.0?
Artificial intelligence って何ですか？
人工知能です。
ああ、すみません。私はちょっとそういう問題よくわからなくて答えることができません。ごめんなさい。すみません。
最後の方で、5.0 社会に向けて、女性はどういうふうな役割を持っているかというのが質問があります。
何について？
安倍首相が以前掲げた社会5.0、Japan 5.0、つまり産業革命第4目の後の社会、つまり社会が非常にいわゆる電子的な機械だとかデジタル化されて、でそこで社会が変わってくるというのが安倍晋三が以前掲げた課題なんですけれども、非常にちょっと難しい話になってるんですけれども、そういういわゆるデジタル化された社会の中に、女性はどのような役割を持っているんだろうなっていうのが、先生の
難しくて私にはわからないですね。そうですね。ごめんなさい。私にはわからないです。
はい。
はい。
ちょっと本人から追加がありまして、その課題を 過去と現在と将来の女性についての質問だったらしくて。つまり、以前、過去でしたら戦争があって、そういうふうな状況の中に女性が、男性がいわゆる例えば戦時行くときはもう我慢したりとか、それは国への貢献だというのがありまして、で、今でしたら、女性がマンディリ、先生がおっしゃったマンディリということもありまして、将来はどういうふうな女性が想像されるっていうのがありますか、社会の中には。
平凡な言葉ですけども、やはりイコールということなんですね。で、本当の意味のイコールなんですね。大事なのは。いや、sekarang ikolnya kadang-kadang bukan ikol betul-betul というのは、例えば、アリバイ作りというんですけれども、いろいろな重要なポストに、sebagai hiasan っていうのかな、sebagai alibay, pemerintah juga diangkat menjadi posisi agak penting, tapi ini hiasan なんですよ。わかりますか、hiasan っていうのは。飾り。
実際には、飾りですね。
実際には、そんなに重要ではないんだけど、とにかく、政府は女性を登用しなきゃいけないというプレッシャーを受けてますから、仕方がないから、とにかく女性も入れましょうと言って、例えば、umpamanya、政府の、重要な会議の中で、必ず、persentase tertentu dikasih kepada wanita なんですね。それから、国会議員の選挙の時も、キャンディデットの、persentase tertentu untuk wanita ですね。それはちょっとアーティフィシャルな感じがします。私に言わせると。だから、そういう形だけ平等にイコールにするんじゃなくって、本当の意味でイコールにまだなってないから、なることが大事だと思います。まず。それが近い将来の課題だと思いますね。
でも、今、例えば政治だとか、いろんな分野に活躍している女性たちの中には、もちろんそういう本当の自分の能力で、それで活躍していらっしゃる、そういう女性たちは、それももちろんいらっしゃるかと思います、ね。
あります。はい。
ただ数的にはまだ少ないということになるんですね。
非常に少ないですね。はい。
先生、
私自身もね、よく飾りだと言われました。飾りとかアリバイuntuk jumlah 数が必要ですから、harus masukin wanita っていうんで、diambil sebagai contoh としてdiambilされましたけども、本当に優秀だからではなく、本当に実力があるからではなく、飾りだというふうによく言われました。お分かりになりますか？
いや、先生は実力ではなくというのがちょっとどうかなと思ったんですけれども。先生、実際には先生の本を私、2003年の時に先生の博士論文を読ませていただきましたけれども。
そうですか。
日本で出版された。はい、そうです。あれ日本語で。
日本語で読んだんですか？
はい、そうです。ちょうどその時、名古屋におりまして、先生の本を読書させていただきましたけれども。
難しい本。本はsudah diterbitkan di dalam bahasa Indonesia です。
bahasa Indonesia、そうですね。
mobilisasi dan kontrol。
後で分かったんですけれども。
それは残念。
でも非常に面白いと思いますし、
ありがとうございます。
いわゆるインドネシア人としては、それを読んで、こういう視点もあるんだなというのが非常にワクワクして、非常に新鮮な視点がいただきました。
ありがとうございます。
はい。では少しちょっと質問では。はい、質問ではなくて、先生の答えをいわゆる要約していただけますか？あまり日本語は分かりませんのでっていうのがありまして。
先生、ディスカッションの答えですか？
そうですね、はい。先ほどの、をインドネシア語でもしできれば。
このディスカッションですね。
つまり女性が過去と現在と将来はどういうふうな形で今、政府だけではなく、どういうふうな変形しているのかというのが、先ほどのディスカッションをインドネシア語で、つまり、もうまとめていただけますかというリクエストがありますけれど。
難しいですね。はい。memang posisi perempuan itu berubah terus, berubah secara drastis ですね。だから、pada waktu saya masih mahasiswa, memang nomor satu jumlahnya sedikit sekali, dan posisi mahasiswi itu sangat diperkecilkan. Sensei-sensei itu semua memikirkan tentang laki-laki saja, dan wanita selalu di nomor 2-kan. Kalau sekarang, kalau terjadi situasi demikian, perempuan pasti protes. Tapi dulu kalau perempuan protes, disebut, oh nakal sekali, perempuan jangan begitu. Harus Yamato Nadeshiko, wakarimasu ka? Yamato Nadeshiko, harus seperti Yamato Nadeshiko. Ini masih baru 40 tahun yang lalu, waktu saya masih mahasiswa. 40 atau 50 tahun yang lalu, waktu saya masih mahasiswa. Tapi sekarang sudah banyak berubah, dan boleh dikatakan generasi muda hampir semua memikirkan mereka equal dengan laki-laki. Tetapi pemerintah juga mengatakan bahwa perempuan memang status perempuan itu equal dengan laki-laki, dan perempuan harus banyak partisipasi perempuan harus dipertingkat di seluruh dunia, seluruh bidang di masyarakat. Dan actually banyak perempuan diangkat menjadi posisi yang cukup tinggi, cukup signifikan. Tapi ini hiasan. Artinya sebagai alibi bahwa perempuan betul-betul memikirkan, membuktikan pemerintah betul-betul memikirkan tentang nasib wanita. Alasan saja desu ne. Dakara, menurut saya, equality yang sekarang itu sebenarnya bukan equal yang benar-benar. Dan pemerintah masih setengah hati mengambil perempuan, mengangkat perempuan kepada posisi tinggi, posisi penting. Ini masih menurut saya seperti sedikit setengah hati desu ne. Wakarimasu ka? Shinken ni yatte nakute,
tidak serius.
Tidak serius じゃなくて、世論がうるさいから、とにかくやるというアリバイを作る。そういうやり方が、bahasa Indonesia では、pemerintah, なんと言いますか、pemerintah pretend ですね。pretend to be seriously concerned with women's position, dan untuk memperlihatkan seriosity itu, pemerintah mengangkat beberapa wanita sebagai contoh, mengangkat menjadi posisi tinggi, posisi cukup signifikan. Tapi itu saya selalu bilang semacam upacara atau hiasan, not serious. ということを言いたいんです。ごめんなさい、pembicaraan saya berantakan sekali. Mungkin susah mengerti. ごめんなさい。
非常に分かりやすいかと思います。
そうですか。すいません。はい。
はい、では少しちょっと質問を検索してみます。
もし、あだですか？
はい。
これは何時まで？
予定としては11時10分ですけれども、また少し1人か2人ぐらいの質問がありましたら、Bapak Ibu, apabila ada pertanyaan silakan untuk menuliskan di papan chat. Nanti kita akan coba bahas bersama Profesor Kurosawa Aiko. Dan saya yakin Bapak Ibu sekalian juga sudah mengenal dengan baik Prof. Kurosawa Aiko sebetulnya. sensei wa hijau ni ko Indonesia ni Indonesia no kenkyu hijau ni ko yume desu no de minasan wa tabun gozonji da to sudah ni gozonji da to omou desu keredomo, sensei no kenkyu ni suite mo moshi setsumon ga areba daijoubu desu ka?
Hai, hai.
Oke. Tentang tidak hanya terkait dengan topik hari ini, bisa mungkin terkait dengan penelitian dari Profesor Kurosawa Iko juga bisa ditanyakan. Apabila ada pertanyaan dari Bapak Ibu sekalian, dipersilahkan.
Maaf, bisa langsung tidak? Saya ingin bertanya.
Silakan Pak Koco.
Baik. Ya, Profesor Kurosawa, saya akan bicara dalam bahasa Indonesia saja karena jawabannya juga bahasa Indonesia. Jadi begini, di Jepang 2 tahun yang lalu itu sudah merubah peraturan mengenai ketenaga kerjaan. Jadi sampai saat ini itu tidak hanya kensuse atau jisuse, tetapi tokute bino. Jadi ya tidak hanya trainee, magang, tapi juga bekerja. Jadi sebagai pekerja migran. Nah, ini kan banyak sekali terjadi masalah ya di Jepang itu. Ternyata ada suatu kompetisi gitu. Jadi ada persaingan di antara negara-negara yang memang mengirimkan ke Jepang di samping anak mudanya Jepang sendiri. Nah, ini apakah sudah ada kiat-kiat dari pemerintah Jepang dengan nantinya bahwa kensuse itu sudah tidak ada lagi, hanya antar perusahaan. Jadi semua tenaga kerja masuk ke Jepang. Ini sebenarnya ada apa di balik itu? Apa alasannya?
Aduh.
Kenapa Jepang?
Saya minta maaf. Ini di luar pengetahuan saya dan saya sungguh minta maaf dan tidak bisa menjawab karena saya simply tidak tahu latar belakang masalah itu.
Ya tidak apa-apa, tidak apa-apa.
Ya, sorry.
Tapi maksud saya bahwa perkembangan untuk selanjutnya itu sangat berpengaruh sekali terhadap ideologi. Jadi terhadap pandangan orang Jepang terhadap orang asing atau pandangan orang Jepang terhadap orang asing itu pasti akan berubah. Jadi di sini ada equality di dalam antar bangsa. Jadi tidak hanya antara perempuan dengan laki-laki di Jepang, tetapi juga antara tenaga kerja yang bekerja di sana. Dan ini sangat kompetitif sekali. Kadang-kadang ada suatu friksi gitu ya. Ada friksi itu apa sih? Ada perbedaan pendapat di antara negara seperti Vietnam dengan Indonesia, Vietnam dengan Brasil, kemudian itu banyak sekali terjadi kasus-kasus yang terjadi saat ini di Jepang. Jadi mungkin itu sedikit gambarannya supaya nanti bisa mungkin ada yang lainnya bisa.
Pertanyaan Pak Koco sangat spesifik dan juga sangat hijau ni senmon teki na.
専門的で、私は専門的で専門ではないので、ちょっと答えることができないんですが、すいません。ごめんなさい。
Agak sedikit sulit Pak Koco ini.
Oh iya, tidak apa-apa.
Maaf ya.
Hanya saya ingin mengatakan bahwa secara umum di Jepang ini sekarang sudah terjadi perubahan yang sangat besar. Jadi tidak hanya pura-pura, tidak hanya furiosuru gitu ya, tetapi sudah terjadi perubahan pandangan pemerintah Jepang terhadap negara-negara lain yang negara yang mengirimkan tenaga kerja atau tenaga kensuse. Ini sudah sangat berubah sekali. Karena apa? Karena memang angka kelahiran di Jepang ini makin lama makin tidak ada. Bahkan Profesor Gary Waseda itu mengatakan tahun 2030 Jepang tidak ada anak lahir lagi. Makanya dengan berbagai cara dia kiat-kiat kebijakan dari Jepang itu dilakukan. Nah sekarang ini dengan booming gitu ya tenaga kerja seperti bonus demografi dari Indonesia itu banyak sekali kita mengirimkan tenaga kerja, tidak hanya kensuse, jisuse, tapi tenaga kerja ke sana dan itu menimbulkan suatu masalah tersendiri bagi pemerintah Jepang sebenarnya gitu. Ya kami mengetahui bahwa Japan Foundation sangat aktif sekali dalam merencanakan program-program yang begitu masif untuk Jepang saat ini. Tetapi juga harus diperhatikan bahwa antara negara yang satu dengan negara yang lain di luar Jepang itu juga terjadi persaingan yang sangat luar biasa. Bahkan terjadi hal-hal yang kadang-kadang melakukan pelanggaran atau kejahatan di antara mereka. Ini saja ingin gambarannya supaya
terima kasih Pak Koco.
Ya.
Ya, terima kasih Pak Koco. Mungkin bisa dijadikan bahan seminar atau simposium, annual simposium asli berikutnya, mungkin bagaimana perkembangan terkait dengan dunia tenaga kerja, termasuk juga sisi politik, sosial, budaya yang memungkinkan muncul di situ masalahnya. Hijau nih kok, hijau nih timely na mondai desu shi, irona,そうですね、いろいろな視点を取り込んで、非常に一緒に議論する必要があるだと思いますので、はい。
一つだけ私が言えることは、日本の都合で研修生の数を増やしたり減らしたりいつもしていますね。日本のクプンティンガンナショナルジャパンがいつもデュータマッカンですね。だから、nanti kalau umpamanya kalau angka kelahiran di Jepang sendiri naik, tiba-tiba naik umpamanya, nanti kenshusei tidak perlu lagi dibuang でしょ。研修生dari Indonesia, dari Vietnam, dari Tiongkok。その時にどの国の研修生が一番最初にディブアンされるか、それは問題ですね。ディスクリミナシーがあるのかどうか。で、大体研修生の制度は一番最初はインドネシアが一番多かったんです、日本へ。1990年代。tahun 1990-an, orang Indonesia paling banyak sebagai kenshusei di Jepang. Tapi sekarang Vietnam とか中国がたくさん入ってきて、インドネシアは少なくなりました。それでも人数は、アブソリュートナンバーは上がってますけれども、でも相対的に他の国より少なくなっています。それは日本の都合なんですね。日本の文化的なこと。例えば、チャイナとか中国とかベトナムの方が日本に文化的に近いと日本人は感じています。多分宗教の関係で。
しかし先生、
はい。
日本人の考え方は本当に今はもう変わるでしょ。変わりましたよ。だから、何ですか、若い者とか、いろいろな、日本人の大人とか、女の子とか、それは考え方はもう違うですから、
みんな違いますね。
気をつけてくださいね。将来は、成果はたくさんあるでしょう。はい、すみませんでした。
はい、どうもすみませんでした。はい。
Terima kasih Pak Koco。はい、先生、時間になりましたので、ここで、はい、一旦先生のセッションを終わらせていただきます。どうもありがとうございました。
Terima kasih banyak atas perhatiannya.
Thank you very much for Kurasawa Sensei for the detail and also a warm discussion about the topics about women and in the future of Japanese society. We are very thankful for your lecture, and this is very interesting topic, and I'm sure some of us will be continuing this topic for our research, and this is a good insight for you, from you, for our research and discussion. Thank you very much.
Ya,
and
terima kasih Pak Andi. Ya.
Terima kasih. Terutama selamat siang. Thank you very much. And I will return the session to Bu Nora. Bu Nora, silakan.
Ya. Terima kasih Pak Andi Bangkit. Oke, Pak Handoko, saya ingin memberikan informasi bahwa Pak Abdullah Makmun dari Dhaka belum bisa masuk sampai saat ini. Tadi memberikan informasi kepada kita. Terlalu crowded. Bagaimana caranya? Mohon dipandu. Okay. Next session will be Dr. Abdullah Al-Ma'mun, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. Profesor Dr. Amiruddin Hasan, University Putra Malaysia. Dr. Rizka Halida, University of Indonesia. And discussion by Bahtiar Alam, PhD. But before that, I would like to read a little bit of Dr. Abdullah Al-Ma'mun, lecturer at Dhaka University, Bangladesh, educational background, graduated Bachelor Sociology from Dhaka University, Bangladesh, graduated Master Sociology from Dhaka University, Bangladesh, graduated PhD International Development Corporation, Huddersfield University, United Kingdom, graduated MBA Law, Northumbria University, United Kingdom. Professor Dr. Amiruddin Hassan, lecturer at Putra Malaysia University, Malaysia, educational background, graduated bachelor from Kebangsaan Malaysia University, Malaysia, graduated master from Kebangsaan Malaysia University, Malaysia, graduated PhD from Durhan University. And our discussion will be ASJI no Bahtiar Alam Sensei desu. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Thank you very much, Nora.
Hi, thank you, Mbak.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the main session of the ASJI 2023 Symposium entitled Women's Role in Japan and Indonesia. My name is Bahtiar Alam, and I'll be serving as your moderator at this session. This session features three prominent scholars representing various perspectives and disciplines. For the sake of time management, let me introduce very briefly each one of these speakers. First speaker is Dr. Abdullah Al-Mamun, Associate Professor and the Chairman of the Department of Japanese Studies, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. His research interests include development cooperation of Japan, contemporary Japanese society, and so forth. Our second speaker is Professor Dr. Aminuddin Hassan, University of Putra, Malaysia. His research areas include philosophy of education and logical thinking. Our last but not least speaker is Dr. Rizka Halida, Faculty of Psychology, University of Indonesia. A political psychologist specializing in the various voters' behaviors, she has been working on unethical behavior, participation in politics, social identity, and intergroup prejudice. I'm extremely pleased that these three prominent scholars will address some aspects of this symposium topic, which is women's role in Japan and Indonesia. Now, each speaker has 25 to 30 minutes for their presentation. So I would very much appreciate it if you could manage your presentation in this allocated time. And if time allows, I think we can accept a couple of questions from the audience. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Al-Mamun to deliver his presentation.
Pak Abdullah Al-Mamunnya belum bisa masuk, Pak.
Oh, belum bisa masuk, Pak. Yeah, okay. So, since Dr. Abdullah Al-Mamun has some trouble in terms of connecting to the Zoom, I'd like to invite the second speaker, Professor Dr. Aminuddin Hassan. Can you join? Ya.
Aminuddin Hassan juga belum bisa masuk.
Oh, belum bisa masuk. Oke. Dr. Rizka Halida, gimana Dr. Rizka?
Ada Dr. Rizka Halida.
Oke. Dr. Rizka Halida, bisa Anda langsung mulai dulu presentasi Anda?
Ya,
Ya.
baik. Terima kasih Pak Bahtiar.
Ya, terima kasih Ibu.
Okay, good morning, best wishes to all of us. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera, shalom, Om Swastiastu, salam kebajikan, namo buddhaya, ohayo gozaimashita. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Rizka Halida. I am assistant professor in Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Indonesia. My research interest in political psychology. And first, I would like to thank the Indonesian Association of Japanese Studies the Japan Foundation, and Maha Saraswati Denpasar University for inviting me to be one of the speakers at today's very important event. Greetings to all of the speakers today and all of the participants. My presentation today is entitled Women's Role in Global and Indonesia Politics, Challenges and Opportunities. May I share my screen?
Yes, I guess so. Let's see. This is from the organizing committee. Ya. Jadi tolong panitianya dibantu deh, ya. Tolong share screen-nya dibikin multiple. Panitia. Bu Nora, bisa nggak nih? Coba sebentar ya, saya telepon dulu nih.
Mbak Fitra bisa tolong dibantu?
Sudah on.
Ya.
Sudah on ya, oke. Bu Rizka, silakan Bu, udah on katanya.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Bahtiar. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Ya, ya, very clear.
Okay, thank you Pak Bahtiar. Yes, let me present my material today, Women's Role in Global and Indonesia Politics, Challenges and Opportunities. We will discuss about politics and women, why this is about the background. And then the second topic is women representatives and leaders in global context, and also in Indonesia context. And then we will discuss the challenges, opportunities, and what to do there. First of all, we need to find a basis. Why discuss women in politics? In this case, we are based our discussion on human rights and democratic principles. In the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it is clearly stated that states are committed to reaffirming their faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, and have determined to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom. In addition, in terms of benefits, the presence of women in politics will increase the possibility of struggle for women's rights, or in other words, legal products and policies that are pro-women will be produced. Now, the question is, how are these basics reflected in today's political context? I will focus in Indonesia and also in political participation of women as representative in legislative and women leaders. Now, we see in global context first. Globally, all democracies have women representatives in parliament now, according to the Inter-Parliamentary Union and UN Women year 2023. Of course, the representation in countries varies. Some are high and some are low. Here I give highlights for Japan and Indonesia in 2023. Japan is ranked 164th with the number of women in the lower house are 46 out of 462 members, or around 10%. And for upper house or senate, there are 64 women out of 248 members, or around 25.8%. Meanwhile, in Indonesia is ranked 105th with 124 women in parliament out of 575 members, or around 21.6% in national parliament. This figure shows that in both countries, should also work to increase women representation in their parliaments. Now we see the women representatives in regional level. Asia is currently in 5th position after the Nordic countries, Americas, Europe, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Asia is above the Pacific and Middle East and North Africa. And the current representation of Asia women is around 21.2% in the single house, or still below the world average of 26.5%. This shows that there is still much that we need to do to increase women's representation in Asia. What about the role of women in executive circle? Still from IPU and UN Women 2023, currently there are 17 women out of 151 head of states in the world, or 11.3%. Then as leaders in parliament, currently there are 62 women out of 273 parliament leaders. I think this figure can still be increased, of course, with massive efforts and involving the cooperation of many parties. Still about the role of women in the executive. Currently, the largest portfolio that women in the executive are involved in human rights issues, gender equality, and social affairs, such as family and children, social inclusion, indigenous and minority affairs. We can see here the green color in the graph. And the highest portfolio is women and gender equality. 84% of women sits there. And while topics such as religious affairs, defense, economy are still very little taken care of by women. This means that the role of women is still very much needed in many fields. Next, about women leaders in the global context. I will discuss women figures who have been recognized at the world level to show that women can also be influential and recognized for their work globally. I quote here from Forbes magazine, which published the world's 100 most powerful women. There are 4 figures from Japan and Indonesia, namely Sri Mulyani Indrawati, Nika Widiawati, Tokiko Shimizu, and Yuriko Koike. The 4 are recognized as having great influence in the fields that each is involved. Sri Mulyani is Indonesia's Minister of Finance and had served as Managing Director of the World Bank. Nika Widiawati is President Director of Pertamina, a state-owned oil and gas company in Indonesia. Tokiko Shimizu is a Director of Bank of Japan, the first woman in that position, while Yuriko Koike is the Governor of Tokyo, the most populous city in the world. Madam Koike is the first woman ever elected as the Governor of Tokyo, and now is serving her second period as governor after being re-elected the second time after her success in handling COVID-19 in Tokyo. The 4 women figures can be a role model for women leaders, especially in Indonesia and Japan, who actively participate as leaders, giving their positive influence to the public. Now, after discussing the role of women in global politics, both as representatives and executives, next we will discuss the role of women in Indonesia politics. First, women have been heavily involved in Indonesian politics since the struggle for independence and the national movement. Several names named as national heroes, such as Cut Nyak Mutia, Cut Nyak Din, Raden Ajeng Kartini, Dewi Sartika, and many more. The women leaders have been involved in politics in Indonesia and their role is widely recognized. Then Indonesia women in the past also held Women's Congress 4 times. The goal is to fight for women's rights in various fields, such as politics, marriage, education, and labor. This is one of the documentation from the Ministry of Education, where Women's Congress held in year 1928. Next, women leaders in Indonesia context. Of the many leaders in Indonesia now, there are Ibu Tri Risma hari ini, Minister of Social Affairs, the upper left picture. And then second, the upper right picture, Ibu Sri Mulyani Indrawati, Minister of Finance. And number 4, Ibu Retno Marsudi, the central left picture, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Number 4, Siti Nurbaya Bakar, she is Minister of Environment and Forestry. Then Ibu Ida Fauzia, lower left, Minister of Labor. And number 6, lower right, Ibu Gusti Ayu Bintang Darmawati, Minister of Women Empowerment and Child Protection. I give here as an example of women leaders in Indonesia. Still in the Indonesian context, what about women in the Indonesian parliament? Since the first election in 1955, there has been an increase in the representation of women from 5.9% in 1955 to 20.9% in 2019. After the first election, we can divide them based on 2 eras, namely the New Order or authoritarian era. In this era, only 4.9% increase in 26 years. A drop happened in the beginning of political reform or democratic era, only 8.8% women in national parliament. A significant increase achieved in 20 years after 1999, reaching 20.9% or 12.1% increase after women quota law was signed. However, the percentage in 2019 still had not reached 30% of the quota. So I think this is the homework for us who work in this area to increase the women representative in national parliament until 30%. Now, about women role in Indonesia, we should also see the gender policies in Indonesia that is pro-women. And there are pro-gender regulation here, at least 5 rules that we can discuss here. First is gender mainstreaming policy. This is to ensure justice and gender equality, signed by the president in 2000. And then pro-gender policies, number 2 is labor law, which includes women's rights as workers, such as maternity leave, breastfeeding and breast milking in the office, signed 2003 by our parliament. And then 30% quota for women in political parties, committees, parliament candidates, and election body, signed in 2008 in Undang-Undang number 2, 2008 and Undang-Undang number 10, 2008. Next policies is the law of that regulate the minimum age for marriage from 60-year-old for girls to 19-year-old for men and women. This is signed in Undang-Undang number 16, year 2015, not very long ago. And last but not least, law of sexual violence crime, who just recently signed in Undang-Undang number 12, that increase protection and legal certainty for women and children who are the victim of sexual violence. So this is pro-gender policies that we have now in Indonesia. Now let me discuss about the positive work identity. How can women become leaders, both in the executive and legislative branches, especially women in patriarchal culture? To answer the question, let me cite a review from Dutton in 2010 about positive work identity, or in this case, positive leader identity. To be succeeded, women develop a positive identity with 4 perspectives in cultivating their positive identity, namely virtue perspective, evaluative perspective, developmental perspective, and structural perspective. The values that are internalized by women will become fuel for women to play a wider role in society. The evaluative perspective states that women have a positive attitude towards their identity as women and the other roles they have. That is, women need to appreciate their role in the society so they can develop this role. Next are 2 perspectives that hold that positive identity is something that is dynamic and can change. Developmental perspective, when women develop their identities so that they become better or ideal. Also, where she develops a self that is attainable and in accordance with her internal and external standard. In this case, women need to determine their identity, then focus on improving their career advancement until they reach a higher level in their career journey. In its development, women can also be adaptive in adjusting to internal and external standards. Next, a structural perspective. The identity of women is multifaceted. In this case, women are also expected to be able to manage their multifaceted identities so that they can balance and complement each other. By developing capacities from these various perspectives, women can form a positive identity as leaders. Now, let me jump into the challenges that we as a society face, especially about women's role in politics. Although women have already achieved many roles in politics, women now are still facing challenges. There are 2 types of challenges, namely on the supply side and the demand side. Challenges on the supply side include political dynasty and the lack of women sitting at the top of the bureaucracy. Political dynasties show that women are still dependent on the resources owned by men, both resources in candidacy funding and networking. The challenge is how women can advance their personal capacity, not solely based on their membership in a politician's family. Then another challenge is the lack of women in the top bureaucracy. The top bureaucracy is the source of supplying women leaders, both in the executive and legislative branches. We can infer the lack based on the following data. The data show that this is the data of civil servants by position and sex on December 2020 and December 2021 from Statistik Indonesia. The data show that the majority of civil servants were male. Female only fill in a small proportion of the job. Higher positions were mostly held by male, while only less than 20% female sit in the high position. Example, senior executive and middle executive. A quite number of female civil servants fill lower positions, such as supervisor and fifth echelon. The next challenge is from the demand side, for society that needs women leaders, namely the cultural and psychological challenges. Society in general still has a gender-biased view and adheres to a patriarchal culture. In a national public opinion survey in 2019, it was found that the majority of people strongly agreed with the statement that gender bias. For example, a woman's place is in the home, 60.2% strongly agree with this statement. Compared to men, women in politics have to work harder to prove their capabilities, 60.1% strongly agree with this statement. And according to religious teachings, women are not allowed to be leaders. 56.1% strongly agree with this statement. There are still quite a number of people who strongly agree with statements that can prevent women from being involved in politics and society, such as few women have the necessary experience for political office, not many women are interested in holding political office, and family responsibilities make it difficult for women to hold political office. Another challenge is regarding religion. In Indonesia, this religion can be both a challenge and also an opportunity. As an opportunity, religion provides networks and organization to create leaders from below, or organic, as well as social capital to promote women candidates. Large Islamic community organizations in Indonesia, such as Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah, have women's wings organization to accommodate women as a social capital. However, on the other hand, conservative ideology can become a barrier for women leaders because of regressive views regarding women's involvement in politics or in the public place. Another challenge is regarding descriptive and substantive representation. After we talk about increasing women representatives in politics, the question is, does the increase affect the increase in policies for the advancement of women? And it needs further studies to answer it. These challenges, especially in Indonesia, are the cause of the gap in representation between men and women in parliament. In 2019, there was a gap of 58.2% for male and female representatives in DPR. However, although we face those challenges, we have many opportunities to increase the role of women in politics. First, gender equality and gender mainstreaming. This is reflected in Indonesia's participation in Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, that give responsibility for countries to eliminate discrimination on women. Indonesia also entered a democratic political system that encourages pro-women policies, especially in political participation. I will mention policies that specifically encourage women's representation, which regulate women candidate quota. First, women candidate at least in one of 3 candidates in the list. And then second, the list have to be verified by local election commission in each electoral district, meaning the government put surveillance in this list. And then 3 women in political party executive board have to be at least 30%. And number 4, quota 30% for election body. So the quota is not only for the participants of election, but also in the election body. The second opportunity is for women in education. Data from Statistic Indonesia in 2022 shows that percentage of girls attending school were equal with boys, reaching 71% in 3 years, 2019, 2020, and 2021. It means that the women or female participation in attending school is high, and the same with male participation. And then the third opportunity is the view of equality between men and women that is starting to exist among voters. I quote the result from our FGD with voters into areas that have largest number of women parliament. It is in Boyolali, Central Java, and city of Surabaya, East Java, held by ANU and LSI in 2021. FGD participants voiced their views on the similarity of leadership qualities between men and women. I will read it. Dare to express opinions, be assertive, and have authority. All are the qualities of men and women, because as a leader, as in the freedom of expression, men and women have equal portion. Be firm, you have to be firm. Women also have to be firm if you or they are already a leader. So it expresses how the participants see that female and male leadership is equal. So after we discuss about women in politics, both in the global and Indonesian context, we have also identified challenges and opportunities for women to play a role in politics. Now we continue with the question, what should we do next? At least we can divide it into 3 levels. First, in the community level, second, institutional level, and third, civil society. First, the community level. First, the societal level. At this level, it is important to increase public understanding of the importance of women's involvement in politics and the early stages of developing a leader's identity. What can be done is through education, and then both increasing women's participation in education and inserting topic of gender equality and politics in the curriculum. Research on gender, especially women's involvement in politics, should be supported more, and the results are used for policy recommendation. In addition, it is also important to involve the media to promote gender equality content. Second, at the institutional level, we need to fight for gender equality in the government, bureaucracy, and high official, both at the national and local levels, make women politicians role models, communicate women's involvement and benefits for pro-women policies, and consistently apply the 30% quota rule in politics. The third is at the civil society level. CSOs, community leaders, and women themselves continue in promoting gender equality and community life. It is also need to strengthen their capacities on women issues. By doing these efforts, gender equality will become the norm, and the society can have a more progressive view of women in politics. And furthermore, women can also develop their identities as leaders and play more roles in society. I think that's all my presentation. Thank you. Arigato. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rizka, for very insightful presentation. Now I would like to ask the organizing committee, the other 2 speakers, have they been able to join our Zoom meeting? Panitia gimana nih? 2 pembicara kita yang lain sudah muncul atau belum?
Sudah ada Pak Abdullah Al-Ma'mun.
Oke, kalau gitu saya serahkan ke Pak Abdullah ya. Saya kasih introduction, alright? Oke. Excuse me? Ada ya? Okay. Let me introduce him. Okay. So moving on, our next speaker, Dr. Abdullah Al-Ma'mun, Associate Professor and the Chairman of the Department of Japanese Studies, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. I would like to invite Dr. Abdullah to deliver your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alam. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Very clear.
Apologies for the difficulties in joining the meeting, and thank you so much for inviting me, particularly my friend, Professor Indrani, and all the colleagues of Japanese Studies Association in Indonesia. Very good morning, ohayo gozaimasu, and salamat pagi. Can I share my screen now?
Yes, I guess so. Panitia, bisa ya, share screen?
Yeah, can you please allow me to share my screen?
Yeah, please allow the speaker to share the screen.
Just go ahead.
Yeah, please, Dr. Abdullah.
Yeah. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, I can. Yeah, you can turn it to the full screen mode, probably.
Yeah, I'm turning it.
Yeah.
Just turn.
Yeah. The bottom one.
Yeah.
The bottom.
Yeah, I'm going to bottom this one. Yes. So, as agreed, I'll be speaking on the women rights perspective in Japan and Bangladesh. I think this is a rare photo in terms of the political empowerment of women, regardless of any developed, underdeveloped, or a developing country. So I draw your attention, all the audience, to look at these three photos. The first one is the Prime Minister. The second one is the opposition leader. And the third one is the Speaker of the Parliament. So this is the reason I'm saying this is a very unique slide, represented with three distinguished female who are now, in fact, running the politics and the show of the country. The Prime Minister, the opposition leader, and the Speaker of the Parliament. The name of the Prime Minister is Sheikh Hasina. The very right, the opposition leader is the Madam Roshan Ershad, and the speaker is the barrister Shirin Sharmin. So this is the current status of, or the reflection of, political empowerment of women in Bangladesh. However, this is the very top of the pyramid, but this issue still remains in terms of women empowerment, both in the cities or the rural areas, regardless in the employment or in the politics or in the society. So with this paradigm, let me now move on to the next slide and highlight a bit about Japan's comparison between Japan and Bangladesh women empowerment. This is the lady named Rabab Fatima. She was the ambassador of Bangladesh to Japan from 2016 to 2019. But we are yet to receive any Japanese woman as the ambassador of Japan to Bangladesh. Historically, all the ambassadors came to Bangladesh from Japan are male. And even we rarely find that ambassadors are accompanied by their wife in Bangladesh. I'll go on to the details of this in next slides. Let me give you a brief idea about the current vision of the government and what is the government plan, Bangladesh government plan to bring the women in the development process. So we have now the 8th five-year plan in front of us for economic development or economic endeavor. The 5-year plan is of a plan for the 5-year economy of the country. And then we have sustainable development goals in front of us. And with materializing the 8th five-year plan and sustainable development goal, our vision is to become a developed country by 2041. So this is a great milestone to note for the audience. And what is Vision 2041? So we like to see ourselves that we are graduated from the extreme poverty and we reach to a upper middle income country by 2030, along with the achievement of the SDGs, and then become a high income country by 2041. Of course, the pandemic has created huge predicaments in number of sectors, but in comparison with many economics, the country is still in the right direction to achieve sustainable development goal, or eventually the high income country status by 2041. The reason I'm giving this background, I think then the audience can understand the importance of participation of women with the vision of the country to become a developed country by 2041. Now, if we look at briefly the current status of the attainment of sustainable development goal, I draw your attention in goal 5, the gender equality, where you can see the country has made good progress in recent years, according to the report of the United Nations. So this is a significant point to note, along with the other progress of the country. With this background, if I just draw a brief introduction of my presentation, I think it is the right way to say that Japan and Bangladesh have constrained approaches in terms of women's rights because two countries are different, The economy is different. Japan is a developed country with lots of positive indicators, where the Bangladesh is still encountering poverty, political unrest, religious poor understanding or conservatism, and other issues. So it is very difficult to really compare two nations as a whole. But unfortunately, the big hole exposed in Japanese society for many years in terms of the women's rights, particularly in the area of political empowerment and economic empowerment. I think we can draw an analogy between these two countries in the area of women empowerment in between Japan and Bangladesh. In terms of the theoretical framework, just to avoid the different jargons and ideas from many different areas and subjects, I would like to confine with the United Nations women's rights policy or declaration, or the activities or the prescription given by them, and as well as CEDAW. I was hearing my previous presenter, and she also touched upon that, which is a good way to draw a relationship between these two presentations. Very briefly, this theoretical framework, I like to highlight that in 1948, most of us know it's a very enlightened forum, I know, but still I'm just touching upon these issues. That's only in 1948, the issue of women's rights formally invoked by the United Nations. And of course, there is a debate in terms of the feminist ideas about the women's rights, but it is arguably admitted that the patriarchy, intersectionality, and social justice has to be changed or modified in terms of ensuring women's rights, regardless of any societies. Then we have a common reference drawn by many lectures across the world all the time about the CEDAW, the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and of course, the Beijing Platform for Action. These are the two most cited international declarations when you talk about the women's right in any human right in country level or in any society. If we now briefly look at the perspective of two countries in relation to international declarations, what are the major initiatives taken by these two countries? This is a very brief summary with very few indicators, but constitutionally, Bangladesh explicitly say women, and again, there is a similarity with Japan, which say gender equality. And in terms of the enrollment ratio in the primary level, Bangladesh is still far behind than Japan. But surprisingly, female status in parliament is much higher than Japan, than in Bangladesh. Apart from this 20.63% current representation of women with 21 elected women, the country has 50 reserved seats for the women in the parliament as well. And in terms of the enhancing capacity of the women representative, there is Women Development Forum in Japan to enhance the capacity, where Bangladesh also have the Women Development Forum. And restriction of being women's surface, the women can exercise their right vote in the lower house, but Bangladesh, we have only houses, so they can also cast their votes in the parliament. A development policy, as it is not explicitly said in Japan about the women development policy, but Bangladesh has formulated National Women Development Policy in 2001 for the improvement of the situation of women's rights and empowerment in the country. Dear Chair, can you hear me clearly?
Very clear.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And just again to confine my presentation in a right structure and to give the audience the understanding in a concise way, I will be speaking on 4 different indicators as reflected in the Global Gender Gap Report. First one is the economic participation and opportunity of these two countries, educational attainment, and then health and survivals, and of course, political attainment. So these will be the 4 pillars of my presentation next. This report shows that Japan's Bangladesh positions 50th and Japan position is 120th in terms of issues faced by the women in the countries. And if we just move further on, and if I briefly highlight these 4 factors, that economic participation and opportunity, we know that female labor force participation has increased to almost more than 70%. And then in management role, it is around 15%. And but the issue is women are more likely to take non-regulatory job, leading to a lack of female leadership. And of course, the pay gap is one of the debated areas in Japan, which was supposed to be repealed or boosted up by the policy of the government called Womenomics. But still, the result is not revealed that much. In Bangladesh, though, women workforce gender gap is 43%, and the limited access to formal sector of employment. Overall, over 94.5% employment in unrecognized sectors like tea stalls, shopkeepings, grocery shops, and other places. Probably one of the information I should disseminate here for the audience that we're one of the leading exporter of ready-made garments across the world. And the backbone of this garment industry are women. And the number arguably is 2.5 million women are now working in our garment sector, and they're the backbone of our #1 export product. But the debate is these women are poorly paid, even in comparison with the male colleague. Moving on, if we now look at the participation and the opportunities of the 2 countries, this is the reflection of Japan and Bangladesh. In relation to educational attainment, I think one word should suffice my statement, which I said at the beginning, that almost 100% in Japan, but literacy rate in 2019, it was 74.7%, having slightly higher than the women is 72.8%. But the gender gap between male and female literacy rate is narrowing down by different initiative of the government. And this is one of the first areas of the government when we are saying that we are up to the attainment of the Development Vision 2041. This is one of the priority areas of the government where the government is putting serious efforts. And the ministry, we have the primary education and the Ministry of Education, 2 separate ministries. This ministry have specific agenda to increase the literacy rate of women so that they can productively contribute to the Development Vision 2041 of the country. In terms of health, of course, briefly, we can understand with the health facilities, with the available resources, Japanese women are well received in terms of health facilities. But in relation to Bangladesh, the highest, it is an interesting data, in fact, the life expectancy rate of women in Bangladesh is higher than the male. And of course, in terms of communicable diseases, women are more affected than the male, but in relation to non-communicable diseases, affecting rate of men is higher than women. But there is serious disparities in terms of health. And I should bring social perspective here, that when any woman experience any health issues, it is socially observed and said that the treatment process and the facilities provided by the families is lesser than the male representative of the society or male member of a family. Political empowerment, this is a very interesting area between Japan and Bangladesh. That's the reason at the beginning of my presentation, I've said that though Japan is much ahead in terms of economy, in terms of trade and investment. But this is one of the areas where Japan is lacking behind. And in this area, Bangladesh showcase a very promising picture, in fact, a promising reality. A 9% representation in the parliament by the Japanese women. And as far as I understand that only 2 ministers are in the 19-member cabinet of the current prime minister. But in relation to Bangladesh, I have started with 3 photos and with a beautiful slide of 3 women, the prime minister, speaker, and the opposition leader. Apart from that, currently 21 elected parliament members are there who are women, and it's out of 300 seats of parliament. Apart from that, 50 seats, which I at the beginning said, 50 seats are there in the parliament for the women, dividing the country in 50 geographical locations. And currently, including the prime minister, 5 ministers are in the cabinet of Bangladesh prime minister's office. If I now, with those 4 principles or 4 areas I have discussed, let us have a brief comparison between Japan and Bangladesh. But please keep that in mind: 2 different economies, 2 different societies, many indicators. In terms of many indicators, Japan are ahead. So with that in mind, let us now move on to the comparative slides between Japan and Bangladesh. So before that, I think I'd just like to highlight with that perspective, even although Bangladesh is much behind than Japan in terms of economic development. But this is a very good statistics to note. In terms of a Japanese woman visiting to Bangladesh is only 1. This is Masiko. She visited Bangladesh. But when it comes to Bangladeshi counterpart visit to Japan, our prime minister, 2 prime ministers, the current prime minister and the previous prime minister, they visited Japan number of times. Our education minister, our secretaries, and other women who are in power now, they visited Japan or visiting Japan frequently. But it's an unfortunate note that we rarely receive any Japanese woman as a high official to visit Bangladesh. Female employment rate, just briefly, 53% in Japan and 38% in Bangladesh. Of course, it is showing 1.2% growth rate, of course, with after the huge development in Japan. This is the current status. And we are moving at a pace of +7 growth rates last few years. Gender gap scenario, the 4 indicators I have highlighted and elaborated. This is the brief. Economic participation or opportunity, Japan, Bangladesh rank 141st, Japan 121st. Educational attainment, Bangladesh 123, much ahead, behind than Japan. Japan is first. Health and survival 129, Japan 63rd. Political empowerment, these are the World Economic Forum data. Political empowerment, Bangladesh is 9th and Japan is 139th. I like to draw the attention of the audience. Probably this is the big hole of Japanese society when it comes to the discussion of women empowerment in Japan. Then economic participation, labor force, it is, as I mentioned a moment ago, 141st and 121st. In relation to world scenario, of course, we have to consider Japan much behind than many other developed countries. If we look at the indicators included in economic participation opportunity, labor force participation, Bangladesh with 0.443%, Bangladesh rank is 134, and Japan rank is 83. Wage inequality, it's Bangladesh position in 109 and Japan 76. But we have to remember that these gaps, 134, we're talking about Bangladesh, and when we are talking about 83, it is Japan. So as I said, that this perspective of these slides has to be looked along with the world scenario or world perspective. Then estimated earned income, Bangladesh position is 128, Japan position is 100. These are the areas of concern when we talk about the women empowerment in Japan. Then senior officials, manager, position 1, Bangladesh position is 133 and Japan position is 130. Again, it's not a well reflection of Japanese society. In relation to education attainment, it's a very rosy picture from Japan, but as I said, that we are much behind than Japan in both regards, literacy rate and enrollment. But a good news for the audience and of course for me to demonstrate that in terms of the enrollment rate in secondary education, it is moving towards 100%, and we are doing well in terms of world comparison as well. Japan's literacy rate is almost 100%, but our position in enrollment in literacy education is 118. Health and survival, sex ratio at birth, Bangladesh is first, Japan is first. I mean, the male-female ratio is pretty similar. Healthy life expectancy, our position is 136, Japan position is 69. And finally, political empowerment, which I'm arguing from the very beginning of my submission. The women in parliament, Bangladesh position is 22nd, Japan 133. Women in ministerial position were in 127th position, Japan is 120th position. Years in male-female head of state, we are much ahead than Japan in this comparison. Challenges, if I'd like to highlight some of the challenges of women empowerment in Bangladesh. First, I like to highlight that religious perspective. But the good news is that currently the Ministry of Religion is putting lots of effort, including educating the imams and the religious leaders to remove the prejudice and predicaments unnecessarily existing for many years by the name of the religion, to put a caveat to the women empowerment in the country, but it is still a problem. Believe in traditional values and superstitions, which can be said in details like dependence on women, preference for the birth of son. This was a very, very common phenomena, but it is changing, I think, preference for the birth of son due to the change of laws in the country, particularly property laws and the marital laws. The attitude is changing. Poor socioeconomic condition, of course, this is one of the reasons or the challenges in relation to women rights in Bangladesh. Male-dominated society, the society is still very much male-dominated, but it is changing. This is the good side of the society. Fear of domestic violence. Two things. One, culturally, the South Asia region and the women particularly is a bit naive in terms of the relationship. And secondly, due to the lack of empowerment in terms of finance or employment, they always feel fear of domestic violence. Workplace violence is still in record, but the government has recently introduced a rule for the gender mainstreaming, under which there is a huge penalty or sanction in terms of the workplace violence, and this is a very good indication for the future improvement of women's rights in Bangladesh. Lack of safety, I think it is a common issue in the country. Limited access to the market, productive services, education, healthcare, and local government. But I would like to highlight that in terms of the local government, our local government micro segment is we call the Union Parishad, or in Japan it should be ward, or in American system it should be ward. So government now has a policy from 2009 that there should be a vice chairman elected position in every ward of the country. Devaluation of women law, this is an attitude of the society. And as a student of development sociology, I myself in many research found that this is a devaluation of women labor in the country, seriously. Inferior women work are informal and they are inferior, such as home workers, caretakers, housekeepers, and nannies is still are not recognized as a job or as a status in the country, which is a challenge for the women empowerment in the country. Of course, women business literacy, particularly as a entrepreneurship, is very poor in the country. In the business forums, like Japan, in fact, in the business forums and organizations, women representation are very low in the country. Moving on, I'll now move on to a slide where I try to find out some of the similarities in terms of the language of this slide and the Japanese perspective. First, that traditional values, there is a commonness between Japan and Bangladesh, that men are superior, women are inferior. And in rules, regulations, in the decisions and policies, we still don't admit that Japan is a male-dominated country, but in reflection, in many ways, it appears that good wives and wise mother concept is still borne by the Japanese male. Fear of domestic violence, this is a common scenario, I believe, along with Bangladesh, workplace violence, lack of safety, devaluation of women labor. And again, the same argument, I think, exists in Japanese society as well. The homemakers, caretakers, and other, of course, in comparison to Bangladesh, these are the well-recognized job in Japan, but still the society's perception perhaps different than regular jobs or jobs in other sectors. Business literacy, lack of women entrepreneurship still exists in Japan as well.
Dr. Abdullah, yes. Thank you. I just want to remind you that you have spent.
Yeah.
Well, you can just wrap it up. Yeah, wonderful. Very informative presentation. Yes.
This is the final bit.
Yeah, so, sure. Go ahead.
So if we now draw the conclusion, Japan and Bangladesh, of course, are in different stages, and as a society, as an economy, are in a different state of affairs. But with Japan facing challenges in the political representation and economic empowerment, where Bangladesh facing issues, of course, in economic empowerment, violence against women in other sectors. But one interesting thing, this presentation perhaps reveals that both the countries have lessons to be learned from each other and must continue to make progress in order to achieve gender equality, both in Japan and Bangladesh. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdullah Al-Mamun, for an extremely informative presentation on gender equality issues in Bangladesh. And I 100% agree with your concluding remark that we should work together in order to achieve gender equality everywhere. Now, let's move on to the third presentation, which is by Professor Aminuddin. Are you ready to deliver your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to talk today on the philosophy on gender issues, because I'm in the field of philosophy of education. So I would like to talk in the basis of philosophy. So philosophy is something that tend to look into anything in a very deep and also call it looking at it wisdomly. So looking at gender issues, it refers to the challenges and problems that arise from the social, culture, and economic expectation and roles that are assigned to individuals based on their gender. Gender issues affect both men and women, as well as those who do not conform to traditional gender norms, including non-binary individuals, transgender individuals, and gender non-conforming individuals. The gender issue can manifest in various ways, including gender discrimination, gender-based violence, unequal access to education, and employment opportunities, unequal pay for equal work, and limited political representation. These issues are rooted in societal norms and expectations that are often deeply ingrained and difficult to change. Addressing gender issues requires a concerted effort to challenge and change these norms and expectations, and to promote gender equality and equity. This can involve measures such as promoting women's leadership and participation in decision-making, challenging gender stereotypes, promoting equal access to education and employment, and supporting individuals who do not conform to traditional gender norms. Therefore, in other words, philosophically, gender issues refer to the social, culture, and political challenges that arise due to differences in gender roles, identities, and expectations. Gender issues can include a wide range of topics, such as gender-based violence, gender inequality, gender discrimination, gender stereotypes, and gender-based oppressions. Gender issues often center around the experiences of women and girls who have historically been disadvantaged in many societies around the world. However, gender issues can also affect men and people who identify as non-binary or gender non-conforming. Therefore, gender issues are complex and multifaceted, and they require ongoing effort to address and overcome gender-based inequalities and discrimination. There are different interpretations and opinions within Islam regarding gender issues, and like any religion, there are debates and discussions on how to understand and apply religious teaching to contemporary social and cultural contexts. Some individuals and groups within Islam argue that certain gender roles and practices are intrinsic to religion, while others believe that these practices are cultural, historical, and should be re-evaluated in light of contemporary realities. Some gender issues that have been raised within the Islamic tradition include women's rights, gender-based violence, access to education and employment, and also LGBT+ rights. There are many scholars, activists, and communities within Islam are working to address and challenge gender inequalities and promote more inclusive and egalitarian interpretation of religious teaching. Like other religions, Islam is not a monolithic entity, and there are diverse perspectives and approaches within it. So let us take some time to look at gender issues from an Islamic perspective. From an Islamic perspective, gender issues are complex and multifaceted. Islamic teachings emphasize the importance of treating all individuals with respect and dignity, regardless of gender. The Quran teaches us that women and men were created from the same soul and have equal worth in the sight of Allah. However, there are also verses in Al-Quran and Hadith that have been interpreted as prescribing certain gender roles and expectations. For example, there are verses that discuss the role of men as protectors and maintainers of women, and the requirement for women to dress modestly. This teaching has been interpreted in various ways, leading to different cultural practices and social norms in different Muslim majority societies. Some irresponsible interpretations have been used to justify discrimination and violence against women, such as horror killings or the denial of women's rights in marriage, divorce, and inheritance. However, there are also Muslim feminist scholars and activists who argue that these teachings should be reinterpreted interpreted in light of contemporary realities, and that Islam promotes gender equality and justice. They argue that Islam emphasizes on social justice, compassion, and equality can be used to challenge patriarchal practices and promote a more inclusive and egalitarian society. Gender issues among Muslim communities around the world are complex, with various interpretations and practices, while some teaching may be interpreted in ways that are discriminatory or oppressive. There are also efforts within the Islamic tradition to challenge this practice and promote a more just and equitable society. However, in reality, the true teachings of Islam and gender issues are actually easy to understand. Islamic teachings on gender issues are based on the Quran and the example of the Prophet Muhammad as recorded in the Hadith. The Quran teaches the men and women are equal in the sight of Allah, and that each gender has specific rights and responsibilities. Both men and women are expected to fulfill their religious obligation and work towards the betterment of the society. The Quran states that whoever does righteous deeds, whether males or female, while being a believer, we will surely grant them a happy life in this world. Islamic teachings also emphasize the importance of treating all individuals with respect and dignity, regardless of their gender. The Prophet Muhammad is reported to have said, "Women are the twin half of men." This highlights the importance of recognizing the value and worth of both men and women in Islam. The term of specific gender roles, Islamic teachings prescribe certain responsibility for men and women that are complementary rather than hierarchical. For example, men are expected to provide for and protect their family, while women are responsible for the nurturing and care of their children and household. However, these roles are not fixed or rigid, and individuals are encouraged to fulfill their duties in a way that is consistent with their individual circumstances and capacities. Islamic teachings also prescribe certain guidelines for modesty and dress, which are intended to promote decency and respect in interactions between men and women. However, these guidelines are not meant to be oppressive or restrictive, and individuals are encouraged to interpret and implement them in a way that is consistent with their individual circumstances and cultural context. In summary, Islamic teachings on gender issues emphasize the equality and dignity of all individuals, while also recognizing and respecting differences between men and women. While specific gender roles and guidelines for modesty are prescribed, these are not intended to be oppressive and restrictive, and individuals are encouraged to fulfill their obligations in a way that is consistent with their individual circumstances and capabilities. Let us now move on to look at how eliminating the wrong views of Islamic teaching regarding different treatment according to gender. Getting rid of incorrect views of Islam regarding the treatment of different genders requires education, awareness, and open-mindedness. Here are some steps that can help in this process. The first one is to seek knowledge. It is important to seek knowledge about Islam from authentic sources such as the Quran, Hadith, and scholarly interpretations. This can help to gain a deeper understanding of Islamic teaching on gender issues and dispel any misconceptions. Secondly, challenge stereotypes. Challenge stereotypes and assumptions about gender roles and practices within Islam. Be open to diverse perspectives and interpretations, and avoid generalization or stereotypes about Muslim or Islamic teachings. Thirdly, engage with Muslim communities. Engage with Muslim communities and individuals to gain a first-hand understanding of their experiences and perspective. This can help to build bridges of understanding and promote mutual respect. Fourthly, promote gender equality and challenge discriminatory attitudes and behaviors within Muslim communities and broader society. This can involve advocating for women's rights, challenging patriarchal norms and practices, and promoting inclusivity and diversity. Fifthly, foster dialogue and open communication between different communities and perspectives. This can involve creating opportunities for dialogue, actively listening to different perspectives, and engaging in respectful and constructive discussion. By taking these steps, we can work towards a more accurate and nuanced understanding of Islam's teaching on gender issues and promote a more inclusive and just society for all. However, there are unfortunately many examples of incorrect views of Islam regarding the treatment of different genders that have been propagated and practiced by some individuals or groups. Some examples include believing that men are superior to women. This is a patriarchal view that is not consistent with Islamic teachings that emphasize the equality and dignity of all individuals. Unfortunately, this view has led to discriminatory practices such as limiting women's access to education, employment, and political participation. Secondly, justify violence against women. And violence against women actually is a serious problem in many parts of the world. And unfortunately, some individuals have attempted to justify such violence using religious texts or traditions. This is not consistent with Islamic teachings that emphasize respect, compassion, and non-violence towards all individuals. Thirdly, imposing dress codes or restriction on women. While modesty is encouraged in Islamic teaching, some individual or group have gone beyond these guidelines to impose strict dress codes or restriction on women that limit their mobility or autonomy. This is not consistent with Islamic teaching as well. Fourthly, limiting women's access to religious education or leadership positions. While women have played important roles in Islamic history and scholarship, some individuals or groups have limited women access to religious education or leadership positions. This is not consistent with Islamic teaching as well, that emphasize the importance of knowledge and encourage the participation of all individuals in the community. Fifthly, stereotyping men and women based on gender roles. While Islamic teaching prescribe certain responsibility for men and women that are complementary rather than hierarchical, some individuals or groups have gone beyond this guideline to stereotype men and women based on gender roles. This is not consistent with Islamic teaching that emphasize the diversity and complexity of human identity. Incorrect views of Islam regarding the treatment of different genders can take many forms, including patriarchal views, justifying violence against women, imposing dress codes or restriction of women, limiting women's access to education or leadership position, and stereotyping men and women based on gender roles. Correcting the incorrect views of Islam regarding the treatment of different genders required multifaceted approaches that involve education, dialogue, and activism. Here are some steps to help. Education. Educate yourself about Islamic teaching on gender issues by reading authoritative sources such as Quran, Hadith, and the works of reputable Islamic scholars. Seek out resources that provide diverse perspective and interpretation, including those that challenge patriarchal or discriminatory practices. Dialogue. Engage in constructive dialogue with other Muslim and non-Muslims about gender issues in Islam. This can help to create a deeper understanding of different perspectives and promote mutual respect and empathy. Challenge misconception. Challenge and critically examine interpretation and practices that are discriminatory or oppressive. This may involve questioning cultural norms or traditions that are not consistent with Islamic teachings and challenging the misapplication of religious teachings to justify discrimination or violence against women or other marginalized groups. Empower women. Work to empower women and promote their participation and leadership in Muslim communities. This can involve supporting women's education, advocating for their rights and representation of decision-making process, and creating safe space for women to share their experiences and perspectives. Lastly, support activism. Support and amplify the voices of Muslim scholars, activists, and organizations that are working to promote gender equality and justice within the Islamic tradition. This can involve attending events or lectures, sharing resources, and contributing to campaigns or initiatives that address gender issues in Muslim communities. So in summary, correcting the incorrect views of Islam regarding the treatment of different genders requires a comprehensive approaches that involve education, dialogue, challenging misconception, empowering women, and supporting activism. Now, let us look at Eastern philosophy on gender issues, because we are talking about Indonesia, Japan on gender issues, or so that let us look at these issues from the perspective of Eastern philosophy. So, because we are all in the East part of the world. Eastern philosophy encompasses a wide range of philosophical traditions from the Eastern world, including those from India, China, and Japan, among others. While there is no single perspective on gender issues across these diverse traditions, there are some common themes and principles that emerge. In general, Eastern philosophy emphasizes the interconnectedness of all things, including gender and sexuality, and highlights the importance of balance and harmony in relationships and society. Here are some key ideas from Eastern philosophy related to gender issues. Yin and Yang. In Chinese philosophy, yin and yang are complementary principles that represent the dynamic balance of opposites, such as light and dark, male and female, and active and passive. Both yin and yang are necessary for the harmony and balance of the universe, and each contains the seed of the other. This concept is often applied to gender relationships, emphasizing the importance of mutual respect, cooperation, and balance between men and women. Karma and reincarnation. In Hindu and Buddhist philosophy, the concept of karma and reincarnation are emphasized the interconnection of all beings and the importance of ethical behavior. According to this tradition, our actions in this life determine our future existence, and we are all ultimately seeking liberation from suffering. This perspective can inspire compassion and empathy toward others regardless of their gender or social status. Non-dualism. Advaita Vedanta, a school of Hindu philosophy, emphasizes the non-dual nature of reality and the ultimate unity of all things. From this perspective, gender distinctions are seen as ultimately illusory and insignificant in comparison to the deeper reality of consciousness of the self. The perspective can lead to a more fluid and inclusive understanding of gender and sexuality. Zen Buddhism. This philosophy emphasizes the importance of direct experience and intuition, and de-emphasizes intellectual concepts and categories. This perspective can inspire a more intuitive and experiential understanding of gender and sexuality, emphasizing the importance of authenticity and self-expression. In summary, Eastern philosophy offers diverse perspectives on gender issues, emphasizing the importance of balance, interconnectedness, ethical behavior, compassion, and authenticity. While these perspectives may differ in their specific teachings and practice, they share a common emphasis on the interconnectedness and interdependence of all beings. Let us move on to look at gender issues from Western philosophy. Compared to Eastern philosophy, Western philosophy, like Eastern philosophy, encompasses a broad range of traditions and perspectives. And there is no single perspective on gender issues across all Western philosophy traditions. However, there are some common themes and principles that emerge in Western philosophy that contrast with those found in Eastern philosophy. One significant difference in Western philosophy is it has historically been dominated by male thinkers and perspectives, which has led to a focus on gender relations and issues that reflect a patriarchal bias. Many classical Western philosophers have framed the gender issues in terms of women inferiority or subordination to men, which has contributed to the oppressions of women throughout history. However, there are also many Western philosophers who have challenged this patriarchal assumption and advocated for gender equality and justice. Some of these key ideas include social contract theory. Some Western philosophers such as Rousseau and John Locke developed social contract theories that emphasize the importance of individual freedom and equality. From this perspective, gender distinctions are seen as arbitrary and unjustifiable, and individuals should be free to pursue their own interests and develop their own identities without being restricted by gender roles or expectations. Existentialism. This philosophy emphasizes the importance of individual freedom and choice, and reject essentialist or determinist views of human nature. From this perspective, gender is seen as a social constructed category that can limit individuals' freedom and authenticity. Existentialist philosophers such as Simone Beauvoir have argued that women's oppression is a result of social conditioning and that women should reject traditional gender roles in order to achieve true freedom and equality. The third school of thought is postmodernism. It challenged the ideas of fixed or objective categories, including gender categories, and emphasized the importance of subjective experience and plurality. From this perspective, gender is seen as a fluid and multiple category that is shaped by individual experience and social context. Postmodernist thinkers such as Judith Butler, have argued that gender is performative and that individuals have the power to share and transform gender norms and expectations. In summary, while there are differences in many ways, gender issues are addressed in Western and Eastern philosophy, there are also many similarities and shared values. Both perspectives emphasize the importance of individual freedom, equality, and authenticity, and reject essentialist or deterministic view of human nature. However, the patriarchal bias in Western philosophy has historically contributed to the oppression of women, and it is important to critically examine and challenge this assumption in order to achieve true gender equality and justice.
Professor, yes, your time is up, 30 minutes. So could you wrap up your presentation, please?
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to wrap on these issues from the perspective in the context of Indonesia and Malaysia, and also in also Japan. Or should I wrap up? Or can I have another 5 minutes? I have another subtopic, which is gender issues in the context of Indonesia and Malaysia, and also gender issues in Japan. But as I need to wrap up, just wrap up the common for what is common for gender issues in Japan, Indonesia, and Malaysia. While in Japan, Indonesia, and Malaysia have different cultures and histories, they all face gender issues that are common across these countries. Some of the common gender issues in these countries include gender-based violence. All these three countries have high rates of gender-based violence. I can see that, including domestic violence, sexual harassment, and sexual assault. And many victims face stigma and barriers to reporting this crime, so that we don't have exact figure, even though it is reported everywhere in these three countries. Gender pay gap. Women in all these three countries earn less than men on average, with the gap being particularly significant in Japan. This is due to various factors, including occupational segregation and discrimination. Lack of women in leadership roles. Women are underrepresented in leadership positions in all three countries, which cultural expectation often limiting women's opportunities for advancement. Traditional gender roles. All these three countries have traditional gender roles that place women in subordinate position to men, with expectations that they will prioritize their families and husband over their careers or personal goals. Lastly, limited access to reproductive healthcare. Women in these countries often face limited access to reproductive healthcare, including family planning and safe abortion services. This can limit their ability to control their own reproductive health and make decisions about their life. Efforts are being made to address these issues, but progress has been slow in some ways. Government, NGOs, and civil society organizations are working to promote gender equality and empower women in this country. So addressing gender issues in Indonesia, Japan, and Malaysia requires a multifaceted approach that involves collaboration between government, civil society, organization, and other stakeholders. By working together, it is possible to promote gender equality, combat gender-based discrimination and violence, and create a more inclusive and equitable society for all. This issue is actually common in Indonesia, Japan, and Malaysia. In fact, it is common throughout the neighboring countries in this region as well, or maybe even throughout the world. Awareness and the implementation of specific and appropriate policy-based actions will put an end to this issue, and that has been rooted for a long time, but only recently has it been widely discussed and fought for. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Aminuddin, and also for your very accurate time management. 5 more minutes you requested, and you finished your presentation in the last 5 minutes. Your presentation has covered a vast range of issues, from Islamic gender equality principles to Western, East Asia, and finally, you did manage to compare Indonesia, Malaysia, and Japan in terms of their struggle to achieve gender equality. Once again, thank you, Professor Aminuddin. Now, moving on, I would like to open question and answer session. And I noticed that there is one question already sent by one of the participants, which is Susi. Ibu Susi Aisyah Nataliwati, masih ada? Ibu Susi?
Dibacakan aja.
Saya bacakan aja, okay. Okay, she asked me to read the question. All right. The first question is, I think this question is addressed to Dr. Rizka. are there any correlation between the increasing of women participation in Indonesia's parliament, with the quality of parliament performances? Right, very, very appropriate question, I guess, especially in the issue of corruption and drugs that affected heavily the society, especially to women, to women, as mother, as breadwinner, and as a guardian for young and next generations. Right. So, in a nutshell, has there been any progress in terms of the quality of our parliament due to the increase of women parliamentarians? Dr. Rizka, would you like to address this question quickly, briefly?
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you, Pak Bahtiar, for reading the question, and thank you, Ibu Susi, for the question. Yeah, the correlation of women participation in parliament and the parliament performances. I think, I think it needs further studies to answer this, because the woman role in our parliament in Indonesia is still in the early stages. Yeah, we can see the increasing women member in our national parliament. However, the increase is not yet to 30% of the quota. So I should say that we still struggle in increasing the number of women member as parliament. And to talk about their performance, it's the next step of our discussion. So, since it is in the very early stage, so we cannot really see the correlate of the women member in parliament and parliament performances. But for example, in your question about corruption and drugs, corruption is under Komisi 3 in our DPR, who responsible for law, human rights, and security. In Komisi 3, from around 53 members, there are only 3 women in that commission. So it is underrepresented still now. And again, we are still struggling to increase the number. But before we can say that our women member in parliament contribute significantly to the performance of the parliament. And about drugs, it is. Do you mean the drugs, drugs in medicine, or drugs in like addictive substance?
Narkoba, Bu.
Oh, narkoba. Okay. So it's under also in about security, I guess. And we are still underrepresented. So the struggle is still increasing the numbers of women. We are in the very early stage and need further studies to before we can correlate the number of women in parliaments and the quality of parliament performances. I think that's my takes, Pak Bahtiar.
Ya, terima kasih, Bu Rizka. There's another question from Ibu Susi Aisyah, which is directed to Dr. Abdullah. Let me read the question. Do you think that the nuclear family orientation of Japanese society hindered the women participation in labor and political force? In contrary to Bangladesh and Indonesian society, which have this big family relationship and systems, Japan has a strong tendency to have small nuclear family. Does that have anything to do with the obstacles for women to participate more in the field of politics. Dr. Abdullah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Susi, for the question. Interesting question, in fact.
Yes.
If we look at the development perspective of any society with the development goal, the society moved towards the achievement of all kinds of economic attainment. But at the same time, when the employment market expands, and particularly when the migration in terms of employment or job starts, it's a common nature of a society which is transforming that ultimately impacts the extended family system, or eventually moves into the nuclear family system. This is the common transformational system in terms of the economic development when we talk about the existence of extended family and the creation of a nuclear family. And if we now look at the gradual development of Japanese society with the economic development supporting this idea or the theory, the Japanese society also, due to the employment migration, due to the employment opportunities, the Japanese expanded family was reducing, particularly after Second World War. And the nuclear family system is now prevailing in Japan. In some extent, understanding, or with my bit of understanding of Indonesian society as a Muslim, and as well as a profound knowledge about Bangladesh society, yes, I admit that when a woman lives in an extended family, she receives support, particularly from a mother-in-law or mother or other sister-in-laws and others for child rearing, for home care, and etc. But we have to admit that with the development of the society, it transforms. And if I now give you the example of Bangladesh, yes, historically, like Indonesia, we inherited extended family, or what you are calling big families. But the number is decreasing due to the employment, due to the women empowerment, due to the job market, due to the migration. And this is the natural tendency. If you look at the criteria underpinned in the theory of functionalist theory of family, you will find that this normally happens. So yes, some extent it is correct, but it's a normal phenomenon. But I like to give you some insight about the current situation of Japanese family when we talk about the nuclear family system and the predicaments of human rights, or how it is causing problem to women rights. Probably most of you present here know that Japanese husband in many occasions are called last train husband. So they travel home in the very last train every day. And another allegation or subjudication against Japanese male or husband is that they like to have beer with friends and colleagues after the office, then going home early. Yes, these are the attitudinal problem when we talk about the nuclear family, women empowerment, because I understand that your argument is if that support system continues from husband and other family members, then it is helpful for that woman to do well in the job, do well in the politics. So this is from the economic perspective. Secondly, from the political empowerment perspective, I think it is not the issue of extended family or the nuclear family or the small family or big family. Rather, it is the mindset of the society, particularly politicians, male politician, to accept the female politician in Japan as the upper hand. So two different issues, but I think I am able to give some perspectives.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. Now I would like to open the floor for questions from the audience. If there is any participant who would like to ask a question, please raise your hand.
Yes, and
go ahead.
What's up?
Yeah.
Mr. Bahtiar.
Ya, Pak Sukoco, silakan. Ya, silakan.
Thank you very much for this time given to me. My question addressed to Prof. Aminuddin Hasan. Just simple question. could you please to explain concerning about emancipation or equality between men and women in Islam or Muslim views here, Muslim society?
Thank you very much, Pak Sokacho.
Yeah.
So the treatment in Islamic perspective, Islamic teaching, the treatment to men and women are equal, but we just need to know the roles of men and women. So equal treatment, but they, as a woman and a man, need to know their roles on what should they do, the responsibility in the society, responsibility in the family. So as a man, we should know that we are leader in our context, the context of having family, the context of leading the society, looking any aspect of a society that we are in, whether at this time or at any other time. But for women, they are also considered leader in their own context, looking at the family and also taking care, take good responsibility for each, take good, call it, do as best as she can for any responsibility that is given to them. So it can be in any organization, it can be in any roles in a society. In an organization, if the women is considered as good to carry out their duties, the tasks based on the post and also responsibility should be given to her. So we should give the role to her, but the women at the same time know what is the limit as the women, as a woman, while carrying out their duties, meaning that they should know how to mix around to make sure that her husband will not call it being some frustrated for whatever ways that she has done in carrying the duty. For example, messing around with other men without any limitation. I think that's in a general opinion on looking at women and men from the perspective of Islamic philosophy.
Go ahead.
Sorry, excuse me.
Go ahead.
I continue this information. In reality, that men and women is not equal. In reality, it's my feeling. Yeah, my feeling. Because the woman is always under the man. The level is under the man. What do you say about this?
Woman is what?
Yeah, because the woman is always if for example, for instance, the wife or the woman will be going out. This is must be agreed with the husband.
Yeah.
From this views is not equal.
Oh, the treatment is not equal. Equal in we call it as we know, justice.
Yeah, justice.
Justice should be interpreted in context. So meaning that if we treat different ways in women and men in what you have mentioned just now, it is not to treat them differently in terms of discrimination. This is not discrimination, just to treat them according to their roles. Like what I have said, justice. If we are bigger size, we have bigger size compared to our colleague. So if we want to give justice, to give close, to give close to them, we need to give the close accordingly, according to the size for each respective individual. So we cannot give the same size to both two persons. This is also same goes to women and men. We treat equally based on their respective roles.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think, yeah, Pastor Kocho, I think these issues will be discussed further in the following sessions. But gender equality, I believe, is a principle that men and women are equal. Yeah, totally equal. Yeah. If a woman would like to work outside the house, she has to consult her husband. But on the other hand, if the husband wants to start new job, outside the house, he has to consult. He has to seek the permission from wife. I think we are totally equal in that sense. And in my case, I feel my wife is a little bit more powerful than I am. That's my personal situation. All right. Okay. So let's discuss these issues in the afternoon session. Probably one more question we can accept. Are there any participant from the audience would like to? Yes, Sakibul Islam. Sakib, silakan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is MD Sakibul Islam Sakib, student of Japanese Studies, University of Dhaka. So my question is to Dr. Abdullah Mamun. According to the government data of Japan, that women in full-time work earn average 22.4% less than their male employees. So it's very common in Bangladesh. The women participation in work is increasing in Bangladesh and also in Japan. But Japan is a developed country, but still this practice, the less remuneration of women, is very common in Japan. So why is it so? Why is it?
Should I?
So I'm asking that.
Japan I get your question. I am asking permission from the chair to respond. Professor Alam, should I respond?
Yeah, sure, please. Sorry.
Yeah, Shakib, thank you first of all for your participation. I'm very happy to see that some of you joined in this session. This is the advantage of Zoom and coming closer with International Forum. So thank you so much for the association and also to my students for joining this. It's a huge opportunity to understand Japan from different perspectives. And I'm hugely honored to present here. Yes, it's a very good question that Japan is a developed country, but why the salary range is different. We have discussed, in fact, if you see in my presentation, I've highlighted that women are, or the debate just took place, who is superior or who is inferior. This dogma or this mantra still exists that male are superior and female are inferior. I don't like to fall into the trap of that debate, but Japanese society still inherits that male are superior, female are inferior. But the argument still very much lacks that whether they're inferior or superior in terms of education, in terms of skill, or in terms of physics. That is very important thing. But unfortunately, even after the Second World War, what the whole world observed, and it's a huge regret that having been well-skilled, well-educated, and highly influential in terms of the skills, Japanese women is still less paid than Japanese male. So first is the evaluation of their efforts. Second, the society's mindset. And the third is the system of the organizations that parochially inherits the male-dominated system and give less access to the women to the good positions. Thereby, they get or earn less salaries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdullah. Yeah. So I think finally this brings us to the end of this session. I'd like to express my profound thanks to all speakers and also our wonderful participants. Let us give a big round of applause to our three speakers that have done excellent job today. Thank you very much for all of you. Yeah. Now I would like to return the microphone to the Master of Ceremony. Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Bahtiar Alam PhD, my senior. Okay. I'd like to thanks to all the speakers, to Dr. Rizka Halida, University of Indonesia, to Dr. Abdullah Al Ma'mun, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh, to Professor Dr. Aminuddin Hassan, University of Putra, Malaysia. And now we would like to enter to the break session for 60 minutes. I repeat, 60 minutes.
60.
And to remind you all to take a pictures before we have the break session. Pak Handoko, could you please arrange the photo session?
Baik, Bapak Ibu semua, videonya harap dinyalakan agar supaya bisa diambil pengambilan gambarnya.
Sini aja bertiga.
Kan ada namanya lagi nyala, masa ketahuan?
Ya udah di situ. Mbak sini aja Mbak. Malu lah boleh. Apa pakai di situ? Ya Mas pakai ke toilet.
Silakan videonya dinyalakan.
Please turn on your video, everyone.
Saya berdua Mbak Santi ya. Hai.
Berapa kali Bu Desi?
Hanya 1 halaman, Pak.
1 halaman, oke. Oke, baik. Lihat di kamera. Hitungan pertama, kedua, dan ketiga.
Oke, 1 kali lagi ya. 1, 2, 3. Siap, 1, 2, 3. Ya, selesai.
Baik, terima kasih.
Terima kasih Mbak Devi, Mas Handoko, terima kasih. Okay, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we will have 60 minutes break session, and I hope you will be coming back to this link before 13 hours. So please coming back before 13 hours. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Assalamualaikum.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.